An entitled jerk who owns a business next to mine tows my car after I park in their parking lot, despite the fact that her and the rest of her clients overflow my parking lot constantly. So I decide to get some revenge after she refuses to apologize by putting a gate up around my parking lot, which effectively brought her entire business to a screeching halt. And the best part about it is that she can do absolutely nothing to stop me. Here's how I did it. So my partner and I own a small 8-person company that shares a building with only a daycare. Our company consists almost exclusively of higher level professionals, people like lawyers and stuff like that. So most of them have their own large office, a couple of common areas, conference rooms, and a nice kitchen setup. All in all, it's about 3,500 square feet, which is obviously a lot for 8 people, but necessary for our line of work. Due to the size of the office, the lease has a parking provision which grants us exclusive rights to all 24 parking spots. And trust me, this will be important to the story later on. Also, another important note is that the daycare's parking lot only consists of about 10 spots in front of the building. The parents would use our lot to drop off, as the daycare's lot would be mostly full of their staff's cars, and even some of the staff would park in our lot as well. And trust me, I didn't mind at all. We had over a dozen empty spots each day, and it was nice to have the mostly happy children around in the morning and the afternoons. Well, that is until about a month ago. I started coming in a bit later at the same time as the daycare drop-off, and our lot was crazy with parents and kids walking and parking, so I just used their lot in the same way they've used ours for years. On the first day, I had no issue, but on the second day, the manager saw me get out and gave me a piercing stare. But then, a week or so later, I did it again and my car actually got towed. And they didn't give a single warning or word from the manager or anyone at the daycare to me or my office. I then went to the daycare to ask if they knew it was my car, you know, the very distinctive old blue truck, and if some kind of mistake had been made. The manager then came out and said it was not a mistake. And in a very rude, demeaning tone, her exact words were along the lines of, "Unfortunately, we can't have the liability of non-staff and parents within our lot, and I'm sure the parents don't appreciate having to walk further either, or an unknown adult like you in the lot." She then looks me up and down, and the thing is, I'm just a totally normal-looking 30-year-old man. I mean, at least I think so. She then said to me, "Don't you have some reserved spots in the back? You really should park there and let us park here." And she said it with an eye roll as she walked off. Now, I was happy that I held my tongue in front of the children, considering how absolutely angry I was, knowing it was not the time for that conversation. A couple days later, I told the manager while we were outside the office that I wish she would have come to me before towing my car and costing me $600. I then asked for an apology and said that since we share the back lot and the parents take up almost all of our spots in the morning and afternoon, can I please park in the front lot on the occasional morning the timelines align? Well, she said flatly no, and basically gave me the same speech she gave last time, at least not commenting on my appearance this time. Well, I left things for a week thinking that it was over, until again I had nowhere to park one morning, having to wait 10 minutes for parents to filter out of our lot, lest my car be towed. And as I'm doing that, who do I see but the manager getting a spot in my lot before me even? Well, I decided to comply with the manager's wishes then and developed a plan. I contacted the building owner and I said, or more accurately lied, that due to compliance reasons with a state license that we're applying for, we need to have a gate installed with employee and guest pass access only in our parking lot. And of course, our company would cover the cost. Well, after some same-day approval from the landlord, it was installed 2 weeks later. Well, I drove in early that first day after the install, and let me tell you something, the mayhem I saw was completely worth it. Watching from the corner window gave me a perfect view of all of it. It started with daycare staff pressing all sorts of buttons on the gate to try and get in, trying to park where they have for months, if not years. Then their lot filled up completely. Parents started arriving, and a staff member had to stand at the gate telling parents that there was no access. The parking lot was basically congested, with parents double parked, taking their children into the building. In fact, other parents parked a quarter-mile down in another lot at the park that our office overlooks. I eventually went down to give the manager a nice little wave, and I walked right back up to my office. And you know what? She gave me a piercing stare that just made me grin ear to ear. Now, I guess she sent the owner a rather angry email about parking rights to the back lot afterwards, and how it's crazy one small office gets the entire thing, because apparently she did not know that we had all of it. He then said that him and I may have to discuss the parking provision in the future, and he also did not know the lease gave the entire back lot, but he says it's not a big deal to him. And I mean, honestly, I'm not sure why he even let me put the gate in the first place. Regardless, I still have 2 years left on my lease with another option to extend an additional 5. So I've got no plans on moving anytime soon from the office or my 24 parking spots, because things could have been a lot different if this lady had just been a little bit kinder. This is a touchdown of a story. I love this so much. Seriously, I love the fact that you got revenge in one of the best ways possible. First of all, if she had just been reasonable, this could have been completely fine. Everybody could have walked away from this with no problems and like everyone could have been happy. But the second she decided to paint the original poster as some kind of creep and weirdo, saying, "Oh yeah, parents don't appreciate having an unknown adult like you walk around." Like that's probably the moment I would lose my mind and do something exactly like this. Like at that point, the gate is worth the investment. Holy crap. Like talk about biting the hand that feeds you. Holy crap, that's funny. Not because of what she said, but because you know for a fact she's about to lose this entirely. And there's nothing she can ever say to get it back either, dude. Like if I was in the original poster shoes, I would sit back and be like, "Oh yeah, I'm absolutely never gonna move. This gate's gonna stay here until the end of time. Say hello to the next 7 years of your life, lady, if your business even survives." So good for you. Seriously, good for you. I hate people who act like this and honestly act so outlandishly rude to people that it really just sets up their own demise in my opinion, because this behavior was atrocious and there is no good excuse for that. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also, go to AmITheJerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. Today, I taught my housemates a valuable lesson after they kept blatantly disrespecting me in our shared space, because their behavior was atrocious and it absolutely needed to be shut down. Here's what happened. To start things out, I live in a household with 5 other girls. We've been living together for almost 2 months now, and it was during the first 2 weeks of living together that we took pride in being nice to each other and respecting our communal spaces, stuff like the kitchen or the living room. Everyone was doing their part and looking after the household, and the vibes were good. Well, within the last month, things have taken a dip with 3 of our housemates. These 3 housemates got into a habit of inviting people around, drinking, and then leaving huge messes that wouldn't be cleaned. My other 2 roommates recently expressed frustration at the amount of times they've had to clean up the kitchen and living room after our other housemates would leave piles of bottles and wasted food and other rubbish behind all over the place. We started leaving messages in our house group chat, kindly reminding everyone to clean up after themselves, and eventually they responded and agreed. But then, earlier tonight, they threw another house party, and lo and behold, they left another huge mess behind. After seeing the living room and kitchen trashed once again, knowing me and my other 2 housemates spent hours cleaning just days ago, it's fair to say that I snapped just a little bit. I'd only gone downstairs to grab a drink, but when I walked into the living room and I saw the massacre of a mess in the kitchen and living room, I decided I was going to take matters into my own hands. So I went to my room, I grabbed a bag, and I went downstairs and I put all their rubbish in the bin, alongside with whatever remaining alcohol they decided to clean out. Then I left the bag on the side for them to find in the morning. So now, if they want the alcohol that they left strewn about for us to clean, they'll have to go rummaging through a bin bag of their own mess just to retrieve it. Now, was it petty? Absolutely, sure. I totally agree with that, and I am willing to admit it. And surprisingly, I'm not the petty type, but this has gone on for weeks and I finally had enough. I would like to think that me and my other 2 housemates did everything to handle the situation reasonably up until this point, but I'm really hoping this helps them realize the importance of respecting shared spaces. Okay, as someone who used to have roommates but now lives alone, holy crap, I love living alone so much more. Like, don't get me wrong, having roommates really does like cut down on costs when it comes to like rent and all this other stuff, but most of the time it's just annoying and it's very frustrating. Especially when you have that moment of realization where you're like, oh crap, they're a bad one. I'm gonna be stuck with them for a while and I hate this. So personally, I love what the original poster did here. I think it's very smart, and if I was in their shoes, I would probably do something similar, because trashing the place is completely unacceptable and there's no good excuse for that. Today, my friends suddenly stopped talking to me, despite the fact that they owe me money and we have been friends for years. But after she blocked me out of the blue for no reason yesterday, I decided to get some petty revenge by turning one of her best friends against her by spreading information that she definitely did not want to be shared. Here's what happened. To start things out, I'm a guy, if that matters, and about 7 or so years ago, I met a girl through a mutual friend. She was very social and she and I grew very close, even when I moved away, and I considered her one of my best friends. Recently, she asked me for some money, and this wasn't a lot, but I gave her a bit of it. Then, about 4 months ago, she got a boyfriend, and let's call him Michael for the sake of the story. I've never met the guy in person, but ever since then, she's been increasingly cold towards me, to the point where she didn't even reply to my happy birthday message. After 2 months of just not talking, she was still generally cold towards me, even though I hadn't done anything to her. I mean, we literally never argued, but then yesterday, she blocked me completely out of the blue. No response, no nothing. And honestly, her friend thinks that it was her boyfriend that blocked me and not her, and I guess that makes sense, but I'm honestly not sure. But by now, she is such a different person that it just really didn't matter. Now, I would have just let this go, except I learned through that same friend that she had been bad-mouthing me for months. And this is where my petty revenge starts to come into play. She has this friend who is another girl who I will call Lisa for the sake of the story, who she constantly tells me is her best friend. And for reference, I do know Lisa despite us never really being that close. Well, today I direct messaged Lisa, and Lisa casually mentioned that she thought this boyfriend was manipulative. And it was here that I decided to casually tell her some of the things and specific details that my former friend had told me about this girl's dating and personal life that I couldn't have possibly known otherwise about. Now, is this petty? Yeah, it absolutely is. But you can't take money from someone and then just block them without saying a single word, because that is something that will absolutely never fly with me. Okay, honestly, the original poster has got a lot of good points here, especially when it comes to like, oh, you want to try and like block me out of your life after taking money from me? Well, congratulations, I'm gonna now like go out of my way to make you look bad. Especially if they're talking crap about me. Like, dude, the gloves are off at that point. Like for me, if I've done nothing wrong to someone and I'm legitimately just trying to be like a good person and be kind and all that other stuff, and then I find out you're talking crap about me, like, dude, I don't know about you, but that sets my hair on fire, bro. That literally will make me go crazy because it's like, dude, there's no reason for you to do that. So in my opinion, this is absolutely justified. I don't blame the original poster at all. And if anything, this is honestly one of those situations where karma is absolutely coming into play here, because this former friend is treating you like crap for literally no other reason other than probably having a boyfriend that doesn't like the fact that you even exist. My entitled parents ruined my party all over money, as they're pissed off about the way we're handling our family farm, putting me in a really awkward situation over something that I really did not want to get involved in. Here's what happened. Okay, so my wife and I, both in our early 20s, decided to host a Halloween party before our first child is due before Thanksgiving. We planned on a hog roast, bonfire, and a hayride around the farm. We had invited our friends and family to attend. I mean, even my sister, who's at college 200 miles away, made the trip. For context, when my wife and I got married 2 years ago, my dad signed over the family's dairy farm as a wedding gift. He said that because I'm raising a family of my own, he was doing to me what his dad did when he got married. Mineral rights also came with that as well. It was a split 50-50, with the possibility of me buying the other half in the future. Well, recently, we've been offered an oil lease on the farm. They're offering $8,000 an acre on a 10-year lease, plus they would give us royalties if they decide it's worth drilling on the property. One of the conditions we have set on the mineral rights is any leases must be agreed on unanimously. Well, my wife and I, after discussing it, are against the lease, while my parents are for it. My mom is extremely for it and calls daily trying to convince my wife and I to change our minds. Now, with that in mind, I want to fast forward to the event of the party. Everyone's having a good time, we're all sitting down, eating, when my mom suddenly pipes up. She starts going on about how we're selfish for denying them that money, on how we're screwing my siblings out of a good inheritance, how I wouldn't have to milk cows to provide for my family if I was smart and actually signed on the lease. My dad started saying I should just do it to keep the peace, and everyone was in shock over this behavior, and it was at this point I told my parents to leave. Now, they left, but not before ranting more on the subject matter. Unfortunately, by then, the mood of the party had gone sour, and everyone decided it was best to leave. So now, I'm angry with how things happened, and my wife is extremely upset, because she had been so excited to have a good time with our family and friends before our child comes, and at this point, we seriously just don't know what to do. Okay, honestly, this is one of those situations that absolutely could have been an email. Like, your parents are super toxic for doing this literally during a party. Like, holy crap, your wife is literally about to give birth and then this happens. Like, that is so unfair. Come on. So yeah, I think that would probably be the last time I invite my parents to a party if they pulled something like this, because this was absolutely unnecessary and it really did kill the vibe. Today, I witnessed a customer literally steal from our nightclub bar as they stole some top shelf booze that is definitely not cheap, forcing them to come back and pay for it. Otherwise, they would definitely be getting in a lot of trouble. Here's how it all went down. Okay, so I used to work at a new restaurant downtown, tucked inside of an office building. The owner was a bit of an overachiever because not only had he opened the restaurant, but he'd also launched a nightclub bar on the same floor, right across the hall. The two places were connected by a shared hallway and restrooms. The restaurant served lunch and dinner, while the bar came alive only at night. And during the day, both kept their doors between the bathroom hallway open for deliveries. Now, the restaurant was very slow that day. We had one reservation for lunch, which was a party of two, and one walk-in table. The two ladies with the reservations came in, had a nice meal, and then went to the restroom before leaving. A few minutes later, the owner came barreling down from his office from an upper floor of the building, and apparently he had been watching the security cameras and saw that our lunch guests had taken a detour into the nightclub bar where they had helped themselves to to a few bottles of top-shelf booze. He frantically checked the reservation system to see if they'd paid by credit card, and it's here that we find out that not only had they paid, but they'd also left their name and phone number on the only reservation. Well, the owner called the number and a man answered, and it was one of the women's husbands. The owner explained to him that his wife had just committed the world's least thought-out heist, and that unless the bottles were returned, he would be pressing charges. Well, fast forward to that evening, and the husband showed up with the stolen liquor, and trust me, he looked embarrassed, not only for the theft, but for how stupid his wife was to steal from the place that she gave her information to. He then ended up giving the bottles back to the owner and saying, "Oh, I'm so sorry. My wife is a complete idiot." Okay, honestly, these people should be lucky that the manager didn't press charges immediately about this. Seriously, he had all the information he needed to probably make their night a lot more complicated. And honestly, I've had managers like that who are very by the book and will literally shut that down immediately and be like, "Oh no, we're gonna charge them and they're gonna get in trouble." So in my opinion, I think the husband of the story and his family got very lucky because this easily could have gone a much different direction. Today, my boss said that if we don't report any time we leave our desk, they're going to accuse us of time theft and of being unproductive. So me and my coworkers decided to maliciously comply by quite literally emailing them anytime we did anything besides work, which resulted in my project manager's inbox being completely flooded. And I'm honestly so satisfied to do this because in the end, they changed their stupid rules back to the way it was. Here's how it all went down. So I work in premium customer service at a bank where we serve the bank's higher value customers. This usually gave us more freedom because unlike in traditional customer service, the focus is more on quality than quantity. However, since regular customer service team leaders took over the project, our freedoms have become more restricted. We were accused of time theft because we didn't log out for 2 minutes to go to the bathroom. And then all of a sudden, we had to report whenever we were not productive. Many of us were threatened with warnings that could lead to us losing our jobs. And even if we just needed to talk to other colleagues about a customer case, we had to let them know. Otherwise, we could be accused of unproductive behavior. So with all things considered, we decided to comply, even though it was a little bit too ambitious. Every time we went to the bathroom, we reported it to our project managers by email. Every time we went to get a drink, we reported it. Every time we took a break, we reported it as well. Anytime we had to talk to a colleague about a customer case, each of the 2 colleagues reported it separately to the project managers by email. Literally every time we left our computers, no matter what it was for, we reported it by email to the project manager's mailbox. Well, after a while, the project manager's mailbox was so full that even important emails were overlooked because there were too many of them. And as you can probably guess, the project managers were completely overwhelmed. And shortly afterwards, thankfully, the rules were abolished once again, because there is no way this could ever keep up. Okay, I've had that kind of manager where they're like, "Oh, if you leave your desk for any reason, we are going to claim that you're stealing time from the company." And it's like, dude, what are we talking about right now? That's crazy. I am literally getting up to go to the bathroom, bro. I'm not stealing time from the company. Like, what's going on? So for me, I love the fact that the original poster decided, okay, we're going to maliciously comply and basically ruin any kind of emails you're ever going to get. Because that really is what it takes. Like, sometimes these managers need to see that, yeah, this rule is dumb, and the way I'm choosing to enforce it is only going to cause me problems. So to the original poster, good for you for doing that because this manager absolutely deserved it. Today, I messed up by secretly recording my coworkers when I left the room, because now that I found out how they really feel about me, I'm seriously wishing I had never done this and I honestly just don't know what to do. Here's what happened. To start things out, I'm the only male in an office full of women, all of whom are older than me. I've worked here for 3 months and I've noticed that conversations stop or change when I enter the room, and there's lots of childish giggling in the process. None of them really speak to me or include me in things, which I'm completely fine with, and if I'm being completely honest, I probably prefer it that way. But curiosity got the better of me, I suppose. Well, it turns out that they don't like my beard or my clothing, and they especially don't think much of my receding hairline either. But what's most unsettling is that on one of the secret recordings I've made over the course of the week, 2 of the women closest to my desk were discussing my wife's appearance after finding her on Facebook. They were complimentary about her at least, but the phrase punching above his weight was mentioned a few times. Oh, and also half of them thought that I was gay because I don't wear a wedding ring. So it turns out I work with a bunch of vapid, ignorant, moronic Karens. And the worst part about it is that I can't confront them about it that I've recorded them, because that would be a can of worms that I just don't fancy opening. Because right now I have really shot myself in the foot and I seriously just don't know what to do. Okay, as someone who's worked in this situation before, holy crap, I am so sorry that you did that, because man, ignorance is bliss. I would rather not know that information, dude. First of all, the fact that they're like, oh, you're punching above your weight, like that's really rude and just disrespectful, but also the fact that they're like, wow, you've got a receding hairline. It's like, dude, I have no control over that. Like, what the crap? If there was a solid solution for baldness besides like a toupee or implants, then sure, the original poster would probably do that, but based on what's being described here, I just don't think that would matter to these people. They just sound like a bunch of gossipy losers. But I will say, someone in the comments section said something very funny in this post that I have to express. They basically said that what you could do is basically just go forward and be like, oh, one of you has been talking really badly about me and I don't appreciate the things that you've said. And then literally detail out everything they've ever said, quoting specific people if you need to. Like really name and shame them and then tell them how hurtful and disrespectful it was and then just walk out of the room. Because I have to agree with the person that commented. This would probably tear them apart trying to find the rat. Now this is like wishful thinking and I think that would be a big gamble, but it would be funny if that did happen, even though I'm not telling you should do that. Because holy crap, I do not want to deal with that kind of backlash. That sounds insane. Especially if it goes wrong and they're like, no, there's no way you could have ever known that. We've never tattled on each other. Which is like a complete lie. You know for a fact they talk garbage about each other all the time. And the worst part about this is like, yeah, you really can't say that you secretly recorded them. Because chances are, based on where you live, that is probably illegal. And if you say, hey, I recorded you secretly, then these people are probably never going to trust you again and you might get fired. So hopefully you're able to like get past this and kind of move forward with your life, whether that's working there still or choosing to work somewhere else. Because I think if I was in your shoes, I would probably start looking for another job just because this would be awful and I would really just not be able to work there properly. My entitled landlord mocks the fact that my mom just passed away, claiming that she doesn't care that my mom died and that I still need to pay my rent on time. So after she said that, I saw red and decided to get revenge, and effectively over the next few months took apart her real estate business, forcing her and her stupid son to file for bankruptcy. And I've never seen someone more deserving of this fate in my life. Here's what happened. So my now ex-wife and I moved into an apartment in 2010. The house as a whole was a renovated townhouse split between two sides, with two apartments upstairs. Now, I wasn't the biggest fan of the apartment as it was a much older building than I had ever lived in, but I quickly adjusted to the wood creaking throughout the night. On the initial walkthrough, we noticed that the only problem was that there was a dip in the bathroom ceiling. The landlord, by the name of Jay, that's not their real name, promised us that he would fix it as soon as possible. Well, 1 year to the day that we moved in there, we heard a loud crash at 4 in the morning. The bathroom ceiling had collapsed, and there was tiling and wood all over the floor and in the bathtub. Now, my wife at the time was typically the aggressive one, while I was more passive and laid back, and she kept calling Jay throughout the day. When she got in touch with him at around 9 o'clock at night, she explained what happened and insisted that it be fixed immediately. But Jay rebuffed, yelling that his girlfriend was a lawyer and that he didn't need to do anything. Now, this is honestly where I got mad. I went outside to have a cigarette and to call him myself. I feigned a relaxed demeanor, and at first he began trying to talk to me as if I was his bro, and kept saying stuff like, dude, I'm gonna get someone out there and it's gonna take like a few weeks. When he couldn't sway me that way, he began yelling about his girlfriend and how she knew the law. But what he was unaware of is that I had read the tenant laws in my state, and so as he tried to lie, I waited until he finished, and then I recited the law, stating that if an apartment was considered uninhabitable, then the landlord needed to pay for the tenant to stay in a place until it was completely resolved, meaning that he would have to pay for us to stay in a hotel, of our choosing by the way, every single night until the ceiling was fixed. He then tried to say that our upstairs neighbor was the supervisor, but he wasn't sure if he could get him down there that night. He placed me on hold, then came back a few minutes later and said that my upstairs neighbor by the name of Phil was out of state with his girlfriend, but I didn't believe him for a second, so I decided to take matters into my own hands. I rang Phil's doorbell and asked him with Jay on the speakerphone if he was assigned as the supervisor. He just laughed and said no. Dejected, Jay said he would have people out there the next day, even though previously he said it would be for at least 3 weeks. There's a lot more to this incident, but it led me to two very specific conclusions. For one, if you're going to lie, then there has to be a consistency in your lie, and make sure that the people you lie to don't communicate with each other. And secondly, this is where a feud started between me and my wife versus him and his mother. She was the original landlord and gave the house to him so he could begin to make a side profit. Fast forward to a year later, and Jay stopped coming going to the house, and his mom began doing the pickups. Around this time, my ex and I had been laid off, and we were working with Social Security for food, health, and housing insurance. We were approved for all three in April, but we would not get the check until May. When our typical check wasn't in the landlord's mailbox, he immediately gave a summons saying that he was taking us to court for conviction. The day we went to court, he had no lawyer, and we were still all going before the judge. The judge asked, "Does the defense have a means to pay within 90 days of non-payment?" We said to them, "Yes, Your Honor." We then handed over paperwork showing that he will be reimbursed for April and May. The judge says, "I see no problem. They are breaking no laws. Why are we even here?" Jay then says, "Well, Your Honor, they've been bullying me." The judge interrupted him and said, "I don't care. Unless they are breaking a law, then this case is dismissed." Well, suffice it to say, Jay and his mother were not happy. Around this time in my life, things were tumultuous. My mother, who had been battling lung cancer for 4.5 years, finally succumbed to it in June. This happened at roughly the same time his mom came knocking, looking for payment. I explained that I would leave the check in the mailbox when we got back from the funeral home, and to please just respect my right to mourn. She took her fingers and began rubbing them together, pretending to play the world's smallest violin. I will never forget what she said next. "Oh, my mommy just died. Woe is me. She probably had it coming. I don't care if your entire family is dead. I want my money." She then smiled smugly, proud with what she had just said. At that point, I saw red, and my heart jumped into my throat. I went, grabbed the check, and handed it to her in absolute shock that anyone would say something so messed up. She had finally managed to push a button that very few people I've known throughout my life have even come close to pressing. I went into rage mode, but not in the way that you would expect. And this is where my revenge started to take place. We were always told that if a health inspector came by to not open the door. Well, I waited until August, since that was the month before the lease was going to run out, and we knew they would not be extending a renewal. I walked up the block to town hall to ask for the health inspection of our property, and it was scheduled for a few days later. Now, there are a few things that you need to know about this situation. For starters, I was friends with all of the tenants. Phil had moved out with his fiance, but the new tenant was a really cool girl around my age by the name of Danny. Tom and Hannah on the other side of the downstairs floor had moved out in July, and Jay was still looking to fill it. The only one who wanted to stay out of this was Rose on the upper right apartment. Secondly, I had gotten permission, as well as her spare key, so I could let the inspector in Danny's apartment, and I knew that I could use the back staircase on the right side to let him into Tom's now vacant apartment. And third, I also knew that Danny was moving out in September, which is a month after we would move out. The inspector came and it was glorious. He checked the exterior of the house first, noting that wires were exposed. There was an old empty dryer, along with other odd clutter in the backyard. I brought him inside the shared entrance, and as I was coming in, he noticed that the last inspected date was back in 1994, which was a little under 20 years to the day that this happened. This meant that for each year he did not have an inspection, there would be an appropriate fine. For our apartment, we had black mold growing in our bathroom, and the bubble in the ceiling had begun to regrow to problematic proportions. Upstairs, Danny's apartment was suffering from leaks in the ceiling, and it looked like her bathroom ceiling was also on the brink of collapsing. We then went to the basement. The boiler was on the verge of exploding. There was flammable items along with gasoline and a pack of matches sitting right beside it. The fire door that separated the two sides did not close all the way, basically rendering it pointless and useless. And on the right side of the basement, there was a toilet that had blown up. It had coated the surrounding walls, and the leakage prevented us from going up to the floor via the right side. And by the way, the entire time, the inspector was photographing and writing constantly. We stepped outside, and he said that he needed to come back. When I asked why, he said he had to run out of the space to write down all of the infractions. He had literally filled the front and had written an entire page on the back portion. I kindly and coyly said, "Well, how much will it cost right now?" He scratched his head and said, "Well, it's probably going to be around $20,000 to $30,000 from what I can see, but it's probably going to be higher as this house was never licensed to be split into apartments." I thanked him for his time, and he said he was going to come back with the county inspector. So eventually we moved out at the end of August, but I got an update from Rose, who did stay behind in the apartment complex. Because he was the current owner, he owed all current fines, and nobody new could move into the empty apartments until everything was up to code. Basically, with 3 out of the before being vacant, he was losing thousands of dollars in potential rent. He handed the property back to his mother and had to file for bankruptcy. Now here's the other thing that makes this even more interesting. Every time an old tenant left and a new one was coming in, an inspection was supposed to be done. And now that all the financial burden had fell on her, they looked into the records and she was fined for each time she had broken the rule. By the end of the year, Rose had moved out, so the place was hemorrhaging money. Meanwhile, I'm just sitting back, proud of what I had done. Now, maybe you're asking, is this all you did? Well, no, it wasn't even close to being done yet. I felt like I had completely destroyed Jay, but my real target had always been his mom. I learned that she had 8 properties throughout 3 towns in my county. I went to each one, spoke to the tenants, and said that I was a concerned tenant from another property and asked if they had any problems with their apartments. Every single person I asked described the apartment in very poor condition and it had intolerable levels, and that the mom was effectively a slumlord. She would ignore problems unless someone turned to litigations. She was threatened that they would summon the inspector, or more often than not, the people would just straight up move out. She would refuse their deposit and sink those into cosmetic repairs so that the apartment looked nicely furnished. People rarely fought back because she knew that the occupants were of upper-lower class minorities. So being the concerned person I was, I went to the inspector of the other 2 towns and asked for an inspection to be done with at least 1 tenant, if not more, and we would be waiting for when they came back. It turns out that she faced pretty much the same infractions on every apartment she owned, and it turned out she actually had 12 apartments, but I initially only knew about the ones that fell within my county. The remaining properties in the next county over were given a mysterious heads up to perform a surprise inspection. From what I can tell, Jay's mom had been in the landlord business for about 40 years, and that collapsed very quickly. Now, since we moved literally 1 block down the road from our old place, I got to see Jay lose his primary source of income and have to claim bankruptcy, but also saw that his mother was also trying desperately to find a buyer. I learned 2 years later that she too had to file for bankruptcy. Jay and his mother actually camped out in front of our next apartment for 2 days, right before she filed for bankruptcy, and I'm guessing just so they could scream at me or my ex-wife at the time. So I called the cops and said that there were strange people standing in a no parking zone and they kept looking up at the 2nd floor. A cruiser swung by and told them to leave. I know I should have used the 2 months I spent monitoring everything to find a new job, but this was the only time I wanted to hurt a person where they hurt the most, and that's right in their wallets. I think I got my point across because none of this would have happened if they had just fixed the ceiling before it collapsed, and they honestly have nobody to blame except for themselves. Wow, this Jay guy and his mother are absolutely awful. I kinda wish the original poster walked outside, rubbed their fingers together, and pretended to play the smallest violin right as they're trying to basically recover their lives. How on earth could someone be so heartless? Here you have a tenant whose mother passed away, and all you can do is say, "Woe is me, too bad, so sad, give me my money." Like seriously, you're gonna get your money. This is not the time to act like that. Those people were awful, and honestly, this revenge was so well deserved. They were literally slumlords, like there's no other way of describing them. They were skating by on the system and intimidating their tenants into saying nothing. So truly good for the original poster for speaking up. You put these people in their place, and you probably helped a lot of people escape a really sketchy apartment. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also, go to AmITheJerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. Am I the jerk for screaming at a lady at the park after she let her unleashed dog near my dog? Here's what happened. So I'm a 21-year-old male, and I've been helping my brother out by walking his large dog while he's on vacation. He is generally well behaved, but he is still reactive to other dogs due to an incident with an aggressive dog. So he has to wear one of those head-pulling harnesses, and he has a thick collar so that we can hold onto it if needed. The other day, I was walking him down a long road when a woman turned the corner with her dog. It was a smaller dog, think like Italian Greyhound size, but not nearly as slender. I made my brother's dog sit down and I held his collar, but when I looked up, I noticed the dog was off their leash, which is something that's not allowed in this area. She was still a little ways away, but her dog was running up to us, so I shouted by saying, "My dog is not friendly, please get your dog." She shouted for her dog to come back, but it ignored her and kept coming directly for us. She didn't speed up or anything though. Now, my dog is usually pretty good with other leash dogs. He'll be on alert and might pull once or twice, but he's more curious than anything, and making him sit is so everyone is more comfortable since he is a very big dog. Unleashed dogs freak him out though, and put him majorly on the defensive, so he was growling and trying to get in between me and this dog. I was trying to get it to go away, but it wasn't leaving, so at this point, I just full body hugged him to try and calm him down and shouted for this lady to get her stupid dog. When she got her dog, she said I didn't need to shout and that he's harmless and he just wants to be friends. So I said to her, yeah, well mine's not harmless and he doesn't like dogs. She then seriously said that I didn't need to be rude about it. I then went back at her and I said, would you rather I be rude or your dog dead? Because he saw your dog as a threat and it wasn't going to end well if you didn't come and get him. This really upset her, which is kind of fair. And she said, well maybe he shouldn't be in public if he can't play nice. And I just said, or maybe you could follow the rules and keep your stupid dog on a leash. Not everyone wants to be best friends with your dog. She called me some words worse than a jerk and stormed off with her still unleashed dog. Now, for some important context, the incident with the aggressive dog was my brother being attacked by an off-leash dog. They both were okay, but it was traumatic for both of them. So when a dog runs up to us or jumps on us, it honestly freaks him out, and he tries to protect the people he's with. The little dog kept jumping up on me no matter how many times I said no, or even gently pushed it away. We also specifically walked this route since there's lots of signs posted about keeping your dogs on a leash. We're also working to make him less reactive, but he just isn't there with an off-leash dog yet. So am I the jerk in this situation? What should I do? You are not the jerk in this situation. That lady was completely out of line. She was letting this dog walk around without a leash, and that is completely unacceptable. That area is very specific. You have to have a leash if you want to have your dog in the park. That's literally the entire reason you go there. So no, you are not the jerk here. That lady was an absolute moron, and honestly, I would have been rude to her as well, because the way she was acting was inappropriate, and she needs to do better, otherwise a meaner dog is probably gonna snatch up her dog. The new management of a bus depot deny my friends from parking on their property, so they decide to maliciously comply, parking in such a way that blocked one of their entrances and denied them the opportunity to turn their buses around for their routes, thus costing them a lot of money in the process. Here's what happened. My friends live in a house that is in front of a bus depot. There's an entrance on one side and an exit in the other. For years, with permission of the owner, they parked their cars beside the house, along a wide part of the exit for the depot. It was convenient, and friendly relations meant my friends did not complain when diesel engines fired up in the early hours to warm up outside their bedroom windows. A couple decades later, the business is taken over by a national chain, and with that comes a number of changes. New tall fences that obstruct views, gates on the entrances and exits, more buses stored that require more maneuvering, and more young, underexperienced drivers. When moving buses, they regularly chipped a fence post, moving them from the exit to the entrance of the depot. The road was narrow with a big hedge on the other side, so it was not a task to perform carelessly. After a couple of broken fences, eventually the wooden post was replaced with a sturdy, reinforced concrete equivalent, and the driver stopped hitting it in a hurry. Another change that came down the pipeline shortly after was that the owners required my friends to stop parking on depot grounds. They wanted the space for their own staff. After asking if there were other spaces that would be acceptable, they were told in no uncertain terms that the cars were not to be on the property at all under any circumstances. So here comes the malicious compliance, and with it the dawning realization for management that there was a reason the previous owner had been so accommodating, because now they park their cars outside the front of the house instead. As the law does not allow parking on the sidewalk, they must be parked on the road proper, so they absolutely block about half the narrow road. Consequently, the long buses could no longer pull out from the exit and turn around the house without hitting the cars. If they needed to go on a route in that direction or just pull a bus around to the entrance, they now have to turn the other way and drive a couple miles around country lanes instead just to get where they need to go. The impact was felt immediately. The depot managers called the police to complain about the obstruction, but the police not only confirmed that the cars were parked legally, but that they must not obstruct the sidewalk, so they could not be parked closer in. Management also petitioned to the local council to have that part of the road designated for no parking, but fortunately for my friends, that has been successfully fought off. Honestly, this is new management's problem. If they had just let these people park in that space, nothing would have changed and everything would have been fine. But but instead they have to drive miles just to get to the entrance and exit of this depot. That is honestly hilarious to me. These buses, by the way, are not easy to drive. I know personally I would not know how to do it. You need to know your routes, and you need to know where you can and cannot turn around. So honestly, the previous owner was really smart. They had a good plan, and they set up a good gig with the people who lived in that house. So honestly, good for you for maliciously complying. This new management and new company absolutely messed up, and as a result of being selfish, they made their lives a lot harder for literally no reason. Am I the jerk for refusing to be available for emergencies during my holiday vacation? Here's what happened. So my holidays were approved by my manager 1 month ago. Yesterday, my colleague John, that's not his real name, which I am very friendly with, also wanted to take a trip to an exotic country to see his friend the same days as my holidays. I told him that I'm very sorry, but I have things planned out and I cannot move my holidays. However, I will not leave the country. I will just spend some time with my boyfriend. Afterwards, my manager tells me that he would really like to approve John's holidays, but I need to be available in case of urgency, even though there's a small risk that an urgency would even arise. Also, he doesn't want the superiors to be mad at him for not having a backup plan in case something urgent arises. But blatantly, I told him that I cannot accept that. I would be busy enjoying my holidays, and I'm not even sure if my manager has the right to ask me that. Well, now I have the impression that my colleague is mad at me for ruining his chance of an exotic holiday, as it seems like a once-in-a-lifetime trip. But I believe that my manager is responsible for this. If he wants to accept the holidays of my colleague, he can sacrifice his own holidays and be available instead. So am I the jerk for ruining my colleague's chances to go on this trip? What should I do? This is not your fault, and this is a classic case of the manager not doing their job. Literally, your manager is there for a reason so that they can find somebody to replace you if there really is some kind of urgent matter. I honestly hate how managers try to make it their employees' problem when they're simply trying to request time off. And that's terrible work practice because it basically bumps one coworker into another, with management seemingly being very nice. So no, you are not the jerk in this situation. Your manager is the jerk for trying to pit you up against John. That's not fair, and if they were actually competent at their job, they would have found a replacement and not bothered you with something so frivolous. An entitled coworker is treating my friend like garbage, constantly ostracizing her and making her life a living nightmare. So I decide to get some revenge and expose her for sleeping around with management at her company. And as a result, her future wedding falls apart and she loses tens of thousands of dollars in the process. Here's what happened. Years ago, one of my best friends by the name of Kate is not her real name, was working for a business-to-business tech corporation on the West Coast. Kate had a coworker in the same department as her named Angela. Angela is also not her real name. Now, there are too many things for me to list that Angela did wrong, but here's just a few notable examples. For starters, Angela would show up without fail about 15 minutes late every shift. She had also been passed around between 3 departments due to not being a good fit in the other ones. She would spend her entire shift on social media on her phone and would regularly give people incorrect information on the phone. She was even seen painting her toenails at one point at work. One of Angela's duties was to reply to an email inbox from contractors looking to renew warranties on their products. One time, the inbox was full of 670 unread emails, and all of those were potential paying customers. She would also flirt with every single man who worked for the company, despite the fact that she had a boyfriend. Now, she was not very attractive, and many of these men would just straight up complain to HR. This also led to her making out with employees in the parking lot, and there has been multiple occasions of that. She would skip out on doing her work all week, causing her to need to stay behind and do some more work just so she could collect overtime. But then she would just continue to skip out on doing her work. Kate finally ratted her out on some of the sketchy things she was doing at work, if you know what I mean, which led to a very meeting between Angela and the HR director, with her supervisor by the name of Kim and the department VP. Now, Angela was not fired, but she was pressured to resign, but she declined to do so. It should be noted that this company is notorious among its employees for not firing people that they absolutely should. Their direct supervisor, Kim, was on to Angela's game though, and would watch her more closely over the months. But Angela vowed to have revenge and spent several weeks trying to figure out who it was. Angela was a large, tall woman who was physically intimidating and somehow intimidated one of their coworkers into revealing that Kate was the snitch. So that's when Angela decided to spend the next week making Kate's life a living nightmare. She was verbally bothering her and being overall nasty whenever she saw Kate, gossiping behind her back, etc. It reached a breaking point when Angela shoved Kate while passing her in the hallway one day. HR was notified, and once again, Angela somehow made it off scot-free. Now, knowing that Angela was somehow invincible to HR, many of Kate's coworkers began ostracizing Kate, fearing that Angela would target them as well. Nobody would corroborate Kate's reports of Angela starting rumors or even bothering her. Kate quickly went from loving her job to absolutely hating it, while also becoming very depressed during this time. And it was right about then that I vowed to get some revenge. Angela had won pretty handily, knowing that Kim had no teeth because HR wouldn't touch her. So Angela went back to not doing any of her work. She even got engaged and bragged to everyone at the office about how extravagant her destination wedding plans were. Kate's only positive working relationship at this point were with her supervisor Kim and a few of her coworkers who would still speak with her when Angela wasn't around. About a month later, Kate unexpectedly received a text from one of her coworkers that still talked to her. It was a screenshot of a text message conversation with a department VP. The VP had revealed that he had been sleeping with Angela, and this message had made its way around the gossip mill back to Kate. So Angela's invincibility towards HR suddenly made a lot more sense. I knew I was going to expose her to her fiance, but I decided to wait on it. Angela would continually update the entire office on what she had done for her wedding plans the previous day, which was then relayed to me through Kate. So I waited until she had to spend as much money as possible, and during this time, I even acquired more evidence of her infidelity. The day of reckoning comes about 2 weeks before the big day, and on Friday after work, I make a throwaway Facebook account to send off all the proof I have of her cheating on her fiance. He doesn't reply, but I can see that it was seen at 6:00 p.m. The wedding plans were canceled on Facebook that Sunday, and I wish I could have been a fly on the wall in their household that evening. Fast forward to Monday, and Angela rolls in about 15 minutes late and immediately demands to speak to HR. A four-way meeting takes place between Angela, Kim, the HR director, and the department VP. You know, the one that she's been sleeping with. 10 minutes go by, and Kim and the HR director both leave. 5 minutes later, and Angela leaves the office, followed shortly by the department VP, and they both return to their own workspaces. Angela begins working, and 15 minutes later, the department VP arrives with Kim and security. They tell Angela to pack her things and turn in her badge, and Angela is escorted out of the building. Angela protested to the VP, and the entire way out, he only says 2 words: "You're replaceable." Now, it was later found out that Angela had racked up tens of thousands of dollars in credit card debt just to pay for her wedding, and now that her engagement was off, she tried to use her affair with the department VP to blackmail her way into a pay raise. She had told them that she had received offers from other companies that would pay her much more, which was a complete lie too, by the way, and that she would leave if they didn't give her a significant raise, which was a complete bluff. When Kim and the HR director left the room, the department VP told Angela that if they got in writing that she would leave without a raise, he could then convince them to give her the raise. He also reassured her that she would take it back during her 2 weeks notice and maintain her position. So Angela took the bait, and the department VP immediately took this formal in-writing notice of resignation to HR and Kim. Rather than having her complete her 2 weeks notice, they decided that it wouldn't be necessary, so she could leave that very day. Now, from cheating on her fiance to sleeping with her boss's boss, all the way up to overplaying her hand and attempting to get a raise while being the worst employee in the department, as well as signing a resignation letter, all of this was Angela's own doing. And while I get the feeling like her house of cards would have fallen on its own eventually, it honestly feels good being the one to help push it down. Wow, that Angela lady sounds like a piece of work. Like seriously, you have to be really twisted to treat people that way. Not only is she a giant bully at work, but she was literally just sleeping around to try and be invincible in the department she was in. Like, that's not okay. That is so corrupt. I mean, what an awful and corrupt HR system, as well as leadership in this company. Like, that is seriously not okay. So good for the original poster for not only standing up for their friend, but also dismantling this corrupt lady's life. She absolutely had it coming with the way she was treating people around her. And the original poster is absolutely right. Their house of cards was gonna fall sooner or later. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also, go to AmITheJerk.com storytime.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. Am I the jerk for refusing to switch seats with a child on an 8-hour flight, even though I booked this seat specifically, and this was my second 8-hour flight just to make my way home? Here's what happened. So for starters and a bit of context, this was my second 8-hour flight on my way home from Africa via Dubai. I had booked an aisle seat so I could get up without bothering others, and a special meal due to health requirements. I boarded the plane, found my seat, and settled in. A family gets on with 3 kids. They don't speak much English, but they ask me if I could switch seats with one of their kids so they can all be together. The father of the family wasn't sat anywhere near the mother and the kids, so it looked to me like they left their seats to random assignment. I initially said yes, thinking it was just to move across the aisle, but then realized they wanted me to switch to sit in a middle seat, and that's when I said straight up, absolutely not. Another passenger then gets up and says he has a seat in the back that I can move to. Now, I have no idea how he has something like that, but I still said no. I said that I had booked my seat and I ordered a dietary meal, and there's no way I was moving to a middle seat. He then starts loudly criticizing me and saying he hopes I understand that I'm splitting a family up. This eventually attracts attention from the crew because it's literally holding up boarding. They got a passenger on the other end of the road to switch and sit somewhere else so their kids could sit together. The other passenger from before then starts loudly saying to his kids and the family, "Do you understand what happened? She thought her seat was too special, so she wouldn't let you sit together." I told the guy to mind his own business, and he responded that he wasn't talking to me. I was exhausted and sleep deprived by this point, and I told him to just stop talking about me and just can it. I didn't think I was in the wrong here. I organized myself beforehand and I booked my seat, and I felt it was quite unfair to have some random guy criticizing me to literally half the cabin for not wanting to swap to a middle seat for an 8-hour flight. So honestly, I need to know, am I the jerk for refusing to switch seats with a kid on an 8-hour flight? No, you are not the jerk. You planned ahead, you wanted an aisle seat, and you have a very specific meal you have to eat. That is not you being selfish, that's you being responsible. The selfish thing is that this family didn't want to have assigned seats, but instead left it to chance. It could have been anybody sitting next to them, and they still would have tried to guilt trip them in the same way they tried to guilt trip you. And that's not fair for anybody. That seriously is so messed up. So if I was in your shoes, I would have done the exact same thing. I would have sat there, folded my arms, and said, "Nope, you better find your seat because you're not taking mine for a second." Mind you, this is also your second 8-hour flight just to try and go home. There's no reason for you to give up something that you properly planned for. That's not you being selfish or heartless, and this father's lack of preparation is quite literally not your problem. Am I the jerk for telling an American guy that he should stop calling himself German if he's never lived there and can barely speak the language? Here's what happened. So to start things out, I'm German, and I was traveling last weekend through Spain. I stayed at a hostel at a mixed room, and some of my roommates were American. At night, we were all mingling and talking about each other, and one of the American guys, upon hearing that I was German, told me, "Oh wow, a fellow German." At this point, I wasn't actually sure if he was an American, so I asked in German if he was German. He mumbled a bit and said, "I'm sorry, I'm German, but I actually don't speak the language, only a few sentences." But he kept bringing up about how being German shaped his life, how important German culture was, and how he apparently celebrates Oktoberfest every single year. I asked him why he would say he was German if he was actually American, and he said that it was because his great-grandfather was German and his grandmother was German-Irish. So I thought to myself, okay, whatever that means. I asked him if he knew where his great-grandfather was from, and surprisingly, he did. He was from Hamburg, Germany. But this was extra hilarious because then it makes no sense for the guy to celebrate Oktoberfest, as that's a Bavarian thing to do. I still didn't say anything, and we just kept talking. The guy kept making all these weird remarks about German culture and German food, like hot dogs and sauerkraut. Me and my friends were then planning to go look for a place to drink, and he asked to come along with us, just so the Germans could stick together. We had a few beers at the bar, and he once again brought up something about being German, and saying he was going to get the German flag tattooed in Germany. And by this point, I was already a bit tipsy, while also getting pretty annoyed. And I told him straight up, "Can you please stop saying that? You're not German, my friend. You're an American of German descent. You don't even know what German culture or food is like. You can't even speak the language. You're honestly just really annoying me." The guy looked pretty angry and annoyed, and kind of scoffed and tried to jokingly say, "You're right, I'd rather be an American. At least least then I can say I didn't lose a world war. At that point, me and my friends were rolling our eyes so hard that we just moved to a different place. Later, some other guy not related to us told me that the guy was pretty annoyed and sad that I told him he wasn't German, because apparently that was a big part of his identity. So am I the jerk in this situation? What should I do? You are not the jerk in this situation. As a fellow American, this guy was being obnoxious, and you are 100% right. You can't call yourself a member of a different society if you not only don't speak their language, but also never live there and you don't know their culture. Just because you have ancestors who came from that area doesn't mean you can claim citizenship or any other kind of connection to that besides blood relatives. And it really sucks that this was such a huge part of his identity. And sure, he can be proud of his heritage and all that other stuff. He can have some kind of connection to it and really enjoy the culture and all that stuff, but he really can't go around and be like, yeah, I'm a German, this is like who I am, because brother, you are from America. You are the least German person walking around right now. So in my opinion, I don't think you're the jerk. I don't think you did anything wrong, and you had every right to put this guy in his place. My entitled company tries to take away my time off by trying to pull a fast one on me and basically trick me out of it. So I decided to maliciously comply, putting them in a nasty spot and nearly quitting in the process. Here's what happened. So for a bit of background, I work as the sole IT guy in a firm of about 75 people that is part of a larger nationwide mother firm. Our local firm has an ongoing agreement with another local firm that we play backup for each other in case we need to help one another with backup or knowledge sharing or whatever. This has been the case since 2009, and I've worked for this firm since 2002, so I'm kind of an old hand at the game. We have this generous leave package that builds the longer we work here. The starter was 180 hours per year leave, and someone with 20 plus years has 240 hours, and that's the one that I have. Now, because we have this much leave, I'm of the mind to not be all that strict with the when and the how. I'm single and have no kids, so I'm happy to let others with the kids take priority to handle school holidays. As such, the last 15-something years, I have always taken the bulk of my leave in September and October, and the rest in Fridays all the way coming up to the new year. The only rules we have regarding when and how we take leave is that it can't be any more than 6 weeks together. You can't transfer more than 7 days to the next year, and your time off must be approved, which it always is. As per usual, I put in my time off request for September and October somewhere in May of that year, and as I was expecting, this gets approved. Around August, we get news from our hardware vendor that they will be installing our new server cluster in the end of September. Now, that's not really a cool thing to do, but hey, what are you gonna do? I talk it over with the big boss and agree to move my leave to February and March of the next year. And honestly, I don't mind that much. He is happy, I'm happy, and we just go ahead with the plan. Now, since I'm a one-man department, and corporations are gonna be corporations, I have a department head that oversees my department, along with a few others. Somewhere in the end of September, she walks into my office and asks me when I'm planning to take the bulk of my leave. I tell him about the server cluster install and that my leave has been moved to February and March. Now, you might be asking, if you're gonna be the department head or part of management, you have to at least be reasonable, right? Well, you're definitely wrong in this case. He tells me that since I won't be taking my leave in this year, it will then be automatically forfeit. I then tell him I have an agreement with the big boss, to which he states that he talked about it with the big boss and that the arrangement won't work since he didn't approve it. So then I get on the phone and I call the boss, and he states that yes, indeed, my leave will not be approved and it can't be moved to next year. And at this point, I was angry. Like, I was so furious, I was fuming. So I took a half day and went home and mulled things over. Now, with age comes wisdom, and I know not to take decisions when I am angry. The next day, I go in and ask a leave statement from our HR department that has a counter of all of our leave, and more importantly, all of our overtime. I had around 700 hours of overtime standing, and that was accrued over the years, and 220 hours of leave. So I put in 5 weeks leave and then 1 week of overtime, and I repeated this over and over again, all the way until I landed on the first week of January. Then I put in the remaining overtime and landed in the end of February. And next to that, I sent in my resignation as well as my 3 months notice, which I planned exactly on the last day of my leave. Not even a half an hour later, my big boss and the department head are at my desk asking me what's happening. So I told them that since the department head had told me that I couldn't transfer the leave, I would then just be taking it this year. And since the agreement to move my leave was broken, I felt I didn't have another choice but to look for other work where agreements in fact would be honored. I then asked them what rule of the worker's manual regarding leave I had broken, if any, and if I did break a rule, could you please point it out? But they literally came up with nothing. Now, after that talk, I went home and the waiting game began. The big boss called me the next morning on my work cell phone, asking me to come in. I said to him, sorry, nope, I'm on leave, but I'm happy to make a pot of coffee if you want to drop by. So he does just that and drops by my place. Things eventually get brought up, and it seems like his department head wasn't entirely upfront with him, even though he wasn't entirely innocent either, and he wants to make things right. My 6 months leave stayed in place, and he offered to match the offers I would get from other firms just to keep me on board within reason. So fast forward, and while I do still work at the same firm, I have since received a 15% increase in my wage. I don't do overtime anymore, and my laptop doesn't come home with me either, and my work phone has to stay at work as well. I still do my job to the best of my abilities, but at the end of the day, if my hours are done, I go home. And even if the building was on fire, my clock out time would mean that I'm out the door. And now, as a result, my leave gets planned around my preferences as well, so I no longer have to shift around to meet other people's needs. Wow, talk about playing the biggest Uno reverse card. This guy had so much overtime and paid time off stored up over the years, he literally was about to take 6 months off of work just to spite these people for not letting him take his time off. Like seriously, these people are messed up. They didn't recognize his absolute seniority in this company, and they really should have been more respectful. And honestly, if I was in your shoes, I would have done the exact same thing. So good for you for taking the initiative. These people were being weird, and in my opinion, they had no right to try and ruin your time off in the way that they tried to do. My boyfriend says that he will leave me if I go back to therapy, and at this point, I seriously don't know what to do. So the title says it all. My boyfriend and I have been together for 3 months. In different places, he's shown immaturity, but I've mostly looked past it and kept telling myself that nobody's perfect. But yesterday, I walk into my bedroom and he puts his phone to his face and says, "She's coming, I gotta call you back." Now clearly he wasn't on the phone and he was playing a joke about talking to another woman, but in my opinion, it was extremely immature. And I told him that this could be considered emotionally neglectful. He goes on that he's a jokester and that in every other relationship, he's played jokes and it was normal. I tell him that a million other women would be okay with the jokes, but that doesn't mean that I have to be. He tells me fine, he'll be serious from now on and not make any more jokes. I respond by telling him I'm going back to therapy. His response to that was to say that the day you go back to therapy, let me know because our relationship will be over. I asked him what's the problem with therapy and if he's worried the therapist will help me realize how unhealthy things are about my relationship. He says that people who go to therapy come out worse and that a stranger shouldn't be giving their opinion on your life or telling you what to do. Now, I know that given the context, me saying that I'm going to therapy might sound like some kind of ultimatum or some kind of threat even, but honestly, I feel like I'm struggling with compromising or even just ignoring red flags, and the lines have become so blurred, I need someone to help me sort things out. Should such an ultimatum be a deal breaker? What should I do? Your boyfriend is awful. First and foremost, there is nothing wrong with going to therapy. That is a normal way to treat your mental health, and that does not make you a bad person. What he's afraid of is that, yeah, you're going to realize how awful of a boyfriend he actually is, and your eyes are going to be opened up by your therapist that your boyfriend might not be the best person for you. So it really sounds like he doesn't want you to figure that out. By the way, this guy is 34 years old, and he's acting like he's talking to another woman on the phone. He's doing that just to get under your skin, and that is so inappropriate. If he was a good partner, he would be very involved in this process, and he would be supportive of you going to therapy. So good for you for making that step, and I honestly feel like you can do a lot better than the boyfriend you currently have. Am I the jerk for slapping a little child after she tried to unalive my dog as revenge simply because I didn't get her the right doll for Christmas last year? Here's what happened. Also, this story came from the Am I the Jerk podcast subreddit. Check the links in the description if you would like to submit your own stories. So I'm a 21-year-old female and I'm engaged to my fiance who's 25 years old. We live within a 70-mile radius of almost my entire family. I have a 2-year-old Australian Shepherd named Heather who is the light of my life and has essentially saved my life multiple times. She is 50% blind, but this has never been a problem. Last month, a family reunion was hosted at my house, which my almost sister-in-law attended along with her husband and 2 children. Her younger child, we'll call her Stacy, that's not her real name, is 9 years old and extremely intelligent. Stacy is an A+ student and never does anything stupid or without reason. At the beginning of the event, Heather will leave my side and walk around sniffing everything before settling back down close to me after about 10 to 30 minutes. Almost an hour had passed since I had welcomed all my guests to this family reunion, and Heather was still absent. I wouldn't usually worry, but since there were many children present, I decided to look around. I was completely appalled by what I found. I was wandering into the basement and was about to leave when I heard a faint whimper. After a moment of tracking the sound, I opened an airtight plastic box to find Heather inside looking strangely tired, meaning that she had been in there for a while. I take Heather out and look around only to discover Stacy hiding under a table. I drag her out and I ask if she did this. She responds by giggling and saying, "Yes, I did." I hold back my tears and my anger. My best friend could have passed away. I asked if she knew the box was an airtight box, and she said, and I quote, "Duh, it wouldn't have been fun if it wasn't one." She starts to laugh, and now I realize she wanted to unalive my dog. So I slap her straight across the face, not very strongly of course, and she runs upstairs crying. And now half the family has blocked me on everything and refuses to realize that Stacy is messed up. It has since been revealed that Stacy had the full intention of taking my dog out, all because of last Christmas when I didn't give her the doll that she wanted. Yet most of my family still sides with her, as well as my almost sister-in-law's direct family. My fiance does, however, completely agree with me, as he understands Stacy's twisted intention and he absolutely loves Heather. So am I the jerk for slapping a 9-year-old for trying to take out my beloved dog? What should I do? Wow, that little monster is absolutely insane. That is so unacceptable, it's not even funny. This little brat tried to take out your dog all because you didn't get her the right doll for Christmas. Like, are you kidding me? Like, seriously, that is such a high escalation, that's not even funny. And I'm pretty sure that's like a sign of a possible psychopath or something like that. This little girl seriously wanted to hurt that dog. She put the dog in an airtight, like, plastic box, I'm assuming, and just left it there giggling like, "Oh yeah, this is what I want. It's not gonna be fun if she can't breathe." Like, what is happening right now? Mommy and daddy are clearly raising a psychopath, and this little girl seriously needs some help. It seems like everybody in this story is focusing on the fact that the original poster slapped the kid, but are still completely ignoring the fact that this little psychopath tried to take out this dog. If the original poster had not gone downstairs and gotten the dog out of that plastic bin, the dog probably would have passed away. That would have been horrific. Literally, how is everybody excusing that behavior and still deciding to take the side of this little brat? Like, what is their rationale? "Oh, don't slap my child. She was only trying to take out your dog." I know if that was my kid, I absolutely would ground them for the next 3 years and probably take them to a doctor to get them analyzed. Like, seriously, that is not okay. I mean, hopefully the soon-to-be sister-in-law doesn't have any other pets in their family, because chances are that little brat's gonna try and take one of them out if you do anything wrong to her. So you know what? You are absolutely not the jerk. I don't think what you did was that bad, considered how that kid treated your dog. And hopefully in the future you set up some serious boundaries with the family and blatantly tell them, "Hey, if you want to come over, don't bring over your psychopath kid because she might try to take my dog out." If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also, go to AmITheJerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. Am I the jerk for chastising my wife for accidentally breaking my MacBook by sitting on it? Here's what happened. So my wife has a habit of plopping her butt down without ever taking a look of where she's sitting. I've asked her repeatedly to look before she sits because some of the things she sat in included puke, an ant pile, a puddle of water that accumulated on the surface of the floor, a spider, and that one was while we were hiking, and so much more. I've mostly learned to mitigate any direct effect this has on me by ensuring breakable things are not anywhere that people would potentially sit. I used to have a habit of setting all kinds of things on the couch next to me for immediate use, and I now have to put it all in a different place. I did this because she would constantly come up without looking while I'm playing a game or watching a show or something and just sit down, and then suddenly the TV is turned off or the volume is messed up. Or in the previous worst case scenario, she sat on one of the joysticks on my PS5 controller and she sat on it while I had the controller sitting next to me so I could watch a cutscene of a game. Lately, she's been borrowing my MacBook a lot, and I always put it back in my office when I'm not using it, just so I can keep it charged. It is a $3,000 MacBook from 2022, and it's one of the M1 models. She left it on the couch and went back, accidentally sitting on it and cracking the screen. I was extremely furious, as not only is there now a financial burden here, here, but I'm also out of computer, and I really need that for some classes I'm taking. When I said to her, oh come on, why can't you ever look where you're sitting, ever? Was sitting in vomit not enough motivation, or an anthill, or a spider? When I said this, she got very defensive. I continued by saying that her lack of attention just cost us hundreds of dollars, and it put me in a bad place for my school program. She called me a jerk for talking down to her because I have asked her many times to look where she sits, and I've snapped before because she will just sit without looking and cause issues. For instance, she sat on an ottoman without looking and spilled a bunch of food over that I had sitting there next to me. This time though, it really pushed me over the edge. So am I the jerk here? What should I do? Honestly, I don't think you're the jerk here. For some context, both of these people are straight up adults. They have enough common sense to know where they're sitting, and it's not like you haven't brought this up to her before as some kind of potential issue. And now the worst case scenario has happened. She sat down on your MacBook, even though you've tried very hard to be as careful as possible with protecting your valuables, simply because she'll sit on them and ruin them. Like, if this doesn't sink in that yeah, she needs to look where she's sitting, then I honestly don't know what will. Thankfully, you can get the screen fixed, but still, that's such a pain in the neck. I would be frustrated too. I think I would get upset as well if after so many times I've said, listen, you need to look where you sit. You're causing all these problems. It's not personal, but you're literally breaking stuff. This is no longer just a cute thing happening. This is like hindering my life. Like, if I was in your shoes, that's exactly what I would be saying. And you know what? I don't think you're really overreacting here when you're getting frustrated that a $3,000 laptop screen is now busted. I think I would lose my mind. I don't know about you, but I don't have that kind of money laying around, even just hundreds of dollars at the drop of a hat, just to spend on trying to get a MacBook fixed right away for classes. Like, maybe at the beginning of the month when I get paid, but even then, like, come on, this is not okay. And it's really inconvenient for you. So I don't think you're the jerk. I think making up and maybe apologizing for snapping might be a good plan here, just to try and meet halfway, but still, I think the point stands. She needs to be careful where she sits down, because she just broke something really expensive, and that's not fair for you in the slightest. This story also came from the Am I the Jerk podcast subreddit. Check the links if you'd like to submit your own stories. Am I the jerk for not babysitting right before going on a trip? Here's what happened. So first, I want to start off by saying that for various reasons, I've decided to start cutting off a few family members in my life, and my grandma is one of the people I started to cut ties with. Now, I went on a camping trip for a week, and I made it clear the week prior that I'd be busy packing. While I was packing, just a day before I would be leaving, I got a call from my grandmother asking me to babysit my brother. Now, normally I did this for her to make money, but lately, I've only been doing it if my dad asked me to, because he normally pays me on time and in full to do it, and he's one of the few people I haven't gone low contact with. And plus, I know he needs the help. But that day I couldn't, because I was literally leaving the next day. So when my grandmother called me asking me to babysit, not giving me any reason why at first, I told her no. She then proceeded to let me know that she had to take her mother, who is my great-grandmother, to a doctor's appointment, and asked once again if I could watch him. I once again turned her down because, for one, I was busy packing, and secondly, she never pays me on time when I do it, if at all. Also, I knew full well that she has multiple babysitters to ask instead of me, so I knew she wouldn't be without a sitter without me. I was later told that this appointment was for a medical issue that my great-grandmother was dealing with, which kind of got me thinking if I was the jerk or not, since I possibly made them late to an appointment to help my great-grandmother out. I honestly don't know if I'm the jerk or not, since I was busy and I'm not on the best terms with my grandma. But at the same time, I don't know if I was being selfish for not helping out when she asked to. What should I do? I don't think you're the jerk at all in this situation. It sounded like you had other commitments and you couldn't drop what you were doing right then and there just to help out your grandma with babysitting your brother. Forget all the money and all the other stuff that she's supposed to pay you, or the fact that she has other sitters. When it comes to responsibilities and other commitments, especially as an adult, you can't just straight up say, no, I can't help you out, and that's the end of it. It doesn't mean you're selfish just because you can't help somebody out. It just means that you're busy and you have other things that take priority over whatever they're requesting of you right now. And it sounds like she had other sitters available. She really could have called other people and said, hey, can you help out instead? So I really wouldn't beat yourself up over this. You are not the jerk in this situation. They probably made their appointment even if they were late, and it's no big deal, because at the end of the day, you had prior commitments. And if they can't understand that, then honestly, that is their problem entirely. Am I the jerk for not opening the bathroom door for my brother's girlfriend, all while I was taking the shower? Here's what happened. So I live with my parents, as well as my brother and
and his girlfriend. We will call his girlfriend Paige. Paige is not her real name. Paige moved in with us about a year ago, since her parents wanted her to pay rent. Now, we have 2 bathrooms, one with a shower and one without. Since moving in, Paige has made it very clear that she doesn't like the smaller bathroom. She would rather wait until the person is done in the larger one, as opposed to just using the smaller one, which is like, whatever, I guess. I don't really have a preference, so I use the small one just to avoid drama. Anyways, a couple of days ago, I had just come home from a long run, and I was gross and incredibly sweaty. As soon as I got into the house, I went into the large bathroom to go take a shower. Everything was fine until I hear a banging on the door. Mind you, I'm in the middle of a shower. I have no clothes on and I'm covered in soap. I ask the person banging what they want, and Paige answers by saying, "Let me in, I have to go pee." At this point, I'm shocked, and I ask her, is the other bathroom being used? But she just sighs and says to me, "Just let me in." I tell her no, and that she can either use the other bathroom or wait until I'm done. She then starts banging on the door and cursing me out, and this goes on for about 5 minutes. But I just tune her out and I continue my shower. When I was done, I just assumed she relented and used the other one, but instead, I was met with a warm, wet surprise when I stepped into the hallway. That's right, Paige had gone to the bathroom on the floor and didn't even clean it up. I am now angry. Not only did she completely bother me while I was in the shower, but now she left a disgusting mess that could have been avoided if she just used the other bathroom. I stormed to her and my brother's room, and we got into an argument. And the basic outline of it was that this wouldn't have happened if I had just opened the door. And this was my brother as well as Paige actually saying this. So I said, "Listen, you were invading my privacy and you left a big, gross mess." Paige ended up telling my parents everything except for going to the bathroom on the floor. They were apparently on my side to begin with, but when I told them that final detail, they were livid. They almost kicked her out right then and there, but after they calmed down a little bit, they told her that she would have to find somewhere else to shower because she was no longer allowed to use the big bathroom. Now my brother's not talking to me, and his girlfriend is telling everybody that I was a manipulative jerk who almost made her homeless. I don't think I was the jerk here, but maybe she was right. What should I do? You are not the jerk, and she is absolutely not right. I am so glad your parents saw exactly where you were coming from. She went to the bathroom on the floor, like straight up just on the carpet basically. And that's because you wouldn't let her into the bathroom while you were showering. That is straight up weird. Paige does not sound like a good person, and it kind of makes me believe that maybe she moved out for other reasons besides rent. Maybe her parents were tired of her pulling stuff like this on a daily basis. And while I'm glad that your parents are on your side, I am so disturbed that they did not kick her out right then and there. Like seriously, that is unacceptable. In no universe is it ever okay for somebody to do that in anyone's home. You go to the bathroom in the toilet. You don't go to the bathroom on the floor in protest, just as some kind of like weird revenge, just to get back at someone for not letting you in the bathroom. Like that is crazy to me. And if I was in the parents' shoes, I would have kicked her out and said, "Nope, you gotta go." So no, you're not the jerk, your brother's an idiot, and if anything, he's probably horrified and embarrassed for the way his girlfriend acted. And if your girlfriend really wants to spread false rumors about you, just tell everybody the truth of what she did. And that instead of going to another bathroom to take care of her business, she decided to squat down and go to the bathroom on the floor like a dog, and then just sit back and watch people's reactions. Because I'm willing to bet they're gonna take your side pretty quickly. Am I the jerk for choosing to leave my son's wedding early, despite the fact that I told him ahead of time that I would be doing that? Here's what happened. My son Alan has just recently gotten married to his wife. I love them both very much. It's also relevant to mention that I really dislike parties and large gatherings. I'm not sociable at all, and I really dislike all of them. So I was kind of a downer when I heard that my son and his wife were getting married and that they were going to have a wedding with around 150 people. I told my son ahead of time that I would probably leave early and that me and the rest of our family would take 2 cars so that they could stay if they wanted to. And he looked like he didn't much mind it at the time. So at the wedding itself, after the ceremony, I basically told him that I was glad and it looked great, but I was going to go home. He asked if I was going to at least stay for the cake or for the food, but the food didn't really look all that appetizing to me. So I told him I was just gonna leave. He said, "All right, whatever, just go." And I went back to my table and I got my stuff. I told my wife and she said she didn't feel comfortable driving back alone as the venue was very far from us and the roads there were not great. I said in that case, she could come with me, and after some hemming and hawing, she agreed. So both of us left and we were on our way. Then 2 days later, my son's new wife bombarded me and my wife with messages that she was disgusted with us, saying horrible things about us, and insulting us as people and as parents. It was really just sickening. I told her off and asked her why she thought it was okay to talk to her in-laws like that, and she said that us leaving ruined the wedding for her son, and that he was upset for the rest of the night. She continued to berate us, but I politely told her to leave us alone, and then I called my son, mainly to inform him that his wife had a temper and he should know about it ahead of time. When we talked about it, he basically started berating me too, and said things like, "You always do this," as well as "just leave me alone," all before hanging up on me. I feel like I'm justified since I told him ahead of time that I wasn't gonna stay. But am I the jerk here? What should I do? Wow, you are definitely the jerk here. You left your son's wedding early. You didn't even feel the need to stick around and try and show some kind of support. You thought about your own comfort and what you wanted and decided, you know what, I'm gonna go home and just spend time at my house. Like seriously, how selfish can you possibly get? This is the one day where your son really needed you there, and instead, you decided to think about yourself and your own needs at once. You very easily could have sat in the corner and been on your phone. You could have at least had a presence there at that wedding, but you decided, okay, ceremony's over, gotta get home and make my own food. Like seriously, you sound like an awful parent. And you know what? Your son probably did see this coming, because from the sounds of it, it kind of seems like you've done this to your son throughout his entire life. Like, can't you see that this is seriously a problem? I mean, you didn't even stay for the meal that they paid for. Like, that is such a disgusting lack of love and respect for you as a parent. It's not even funny. And you also basically forced your wife to leave as well, even though your wife probably didn't want to leave. And now when you get confronted by his wife, who doesn't have a temper by the way, as she was literally just defending her husband, you have the audacity to try and flip the script and be like, wow, I'm the victim here. You're not the victim here. You're the assailant. What you did was very selfish, and you absolutely need to apologize. So in my opinion, yes, you are the jerk. That was so inappropriate, and you have burned a serious bridge in your son's life. My daughter stood up to her bully and put her in her place after this brat tried to mock my daughter and my son for being adopted. And now I'm not sure if my daughter's the jerk or if she might have taken things a little too far. Here's what happened. So, according to my daughter, this happened last week, but I just heard about it now. For context, I have 11-year-old twins, a boy who we will call Leo and a girl who we will call Libra. Both of their names are fake. They are adopted as I am single, and they look absolutely nothing like me. They are both blonde with gray eyes, and I have dark hair with brown eyes. Now, they know they are adopted, but they don't care. However, they are in middle school, and this is the age of the most discrimination, at least according to my own experience. Now, here is where the trouble starts. Libra looks like a very quiet kid, but she will fight to the end to defend her brother, who is shy and non-confrontational. They have a classmate who we will call Julia, and Julia is one of those classic wannabe popular middle school girls. You know the type. She thinks that she is the most important person in the world, and the one thing that she can't stand is being told that she's not. Unfortunately, they are on the same bus, and this is where our story takes place. Libra and Leo are sitting next to each other in the seat, and Julia is 2 rows behind them, nose in her phone. Suddenly, one of Julia's friends whispers something in her ear and then points to Leo. So Julia walks up to him and says, "Why are you sitting next to that dweeb? She wears nerd glasses and is ugly." And she's talking about Libra. Leo says hesitantly, cause she's my sister. Julia then literally replies the meanest comment I've ever heard. I swear my blood was boiling when Libra told me what she said. This little brat said, "No, she is not your sister. You are adopted. That means you don't have a family." This then brought about a shocked silence. "Your mom does not look the same as you, so you can't be related. You will never be as awesome as me because you don't have a real family." Libra responds to this with the most awesome insult I've ever heard in a while. "You know what, Julia? You remind me of a dandelion in a field of dandelions. You know why? Because a flower on its own is nice, but when it's put in a group of its own kind, it will stand out more than a single drop of water in the ocean. You say you are beautiful and amazing because you straighten your hair, you slather on makeup, and your pants are too short for you. That may be friends when you are friends with dweebs like me, but in a sea of made up and fake girls just like yourself, you are insignificant, barely noticeable. You pretend others are beneath your gaze while you yourself are immemorable. To me and my brother, you matter no more than a speck of dust." After that, there was a lot more silence, and this is where I think Libra might have taken it too far. She actually spit at Julia. Yep, a big glob of spit right on her shiny new Converse. Julia just started sobbing like crazy. She went back to her seat, where even her friends scooted away from her. After Libra told me this, I was simultaneously laughing and worried, because I really didn't think that she would go as far as spitting on Julia's shoes. She also told me that she used dandelions as an example because they are toxic on the inside. But that begs the question, is my daughter a jerk for the way she talked to this bully? No, your daughter's not the jerk. She seriously said exactly what needed to be said. People like this who act like they're better than other people and put down others just because they're adopted, like first off, who cares? And secondly, that's just such a dumb insult in and of itself. These kids know they're adopted and they love their parents regardless. And the fact that this Julia kid would suddenly be like, yeah, you're adopted, you don't have a family. That is such a toxic thing to do, and I would not blame your daughter for doing that in the slightest. So no, she's not the jerk. She might get in trouble at school, but honestly, who cares? That little brat crossed the line, and she has no business talking to anybody in that way. A military soldier sucker punches me in the face after I get into a minor fender bender with his car. And after he drives off and nearly runs me over with his car, I decide to pursue criminal charges, forcing him to be kicked out of the United States military while also requiring him to pay me tens of thousands of dollars. Here's what happened. So I was working as a civilian for the United States military overseas, and I lived off base in an apartment complex popular among the US military. And one fateful morning, I accidentally hit another soldier's vehicle. Upon exiting the vehicle, I noticed that both of our vehicles were what you would call a hoop tie. A hoop tie is an old car that is pretty beat up that has been passed around from service to service member, and they generally sell for about $2,000. I also recognized that I was at fault for the accident, and honestly, it was a very minor accident. His rear bumper was dented in slightly, and I could hear that both of our cars were still running. I approached the driver who had already gotten out, and he was in uniform, and I apologized and said if it was all right with him, I'd like to negotiate a payment that I will pay him in cash, and we don't have to involve any of the authorities. I wanted to keep this as simple as possible. I'll be honest, the accident was so minor, I honestly expected him to say, nah, it's all good. But even if he wanted some money, I'd be willing to pay him. I have always been of the opinion, if you have a fender bender and can negotiate agreeable terms between both the parties, it's best not to involve insurance or the police. But this guy told me he wanted to call the police. I said we could call the police, or we could go on base together and I could give him $300 for any of the damages. But he said that wasn't enough, so I upped the offer to $500. And then he did something so unbelievable that I honestly didn't expect it. He proceeded to punch me in the face. It was a complete sucker punch, and I was so caught off guard. He then got into his car and took off, and in the process nearly ran me over. Now, I had a black box in my car which recorded everything. I went to the marshal office on the base, which is basically the police station, and I reported the accident and the assault and showed the military police the footage. And then they used the license plate to track him down. At this point, I was also asked if I wanted to involve the local authorities and press criminal charges off base. Honestly, I felt like the soldier would learn his lesson if I let the UMCJ, which is basically the military court, completely handle this, and I decided to say not at this time. Now, the end result of the incident was that the soldier got 60 days of extra duty. He got a reduction in rank and forfeited a portion of his paycheck. And well, essentially, if he just dealt with that, this would have been the end of the whole ordeal. And honestly, at this point, I assumed our little ordeal was over, but boy, have I never been more wrong. A few days after his punishment was decided on, which was not long after the incident itself, I was in the grocery store on base shopping when the soldier who attacked me saw me and began to insult me. I told him he needed to calm down and that he should just learn his lesson, but he told me that I was a coward who didn't know how to take a good punch. But I reminded him that I held back on destroying his life, and he just told me that he's already been punished and I can't touch him again. Eventually, he just left me be. Now, a store employee witnessed the entire encounter, and I got the employee's detail and reported this interaction to his command. His commander told me he had been ordered to not interact with me, and now that he has, action would be taken. His commander also recommended that I involve the local authorities since this soldier obviously isn't learning his lesson. So I did just that. I contacted an attorney, and the attorney at first was unsure if we would be successful in suing the soldier, and I just said he would need a cash payment to take the case. Honestly, I was mad, and I wanted to teach this guy a lesson. So eventually, I agreed to pursue this, and honestly, it was not cheap. Now, to keep this story relatively short, we ended up in a court off base. We presented our evidence. The soldier in question had decided to represent himself. Several times in the court, he had outbursts, and eventually, the judge ended up granting me a judgment of approximately $50,000 US. When the judgment was given, the soldier called the judge an awful name, and that the army would cover him for everything. wedding. So the judge decided his judgment was going to be $80,000, with the judge then asking me if I also wanted to press charges against this soldier, all in criminal court. I mean, honestly, it was obvious this guy wasn't going to learn a lesson. So I told the judge I wanted to pursue criminal charges in addition to his judgment. My lawyer later advised me that if I ever wanted to see the money, I should pursue an international hold. And with this judgment, it's likely that a judge would grant this to me. Basically, an international hold is where this soldier would not be allowed to leave the country until I was paid my $80,000. Also, he told me that according to the agreement between the US military and the host country, the US military would honor the international hold. So basically, the military would not protect him or move him out of the country to avoid punishment. And honestly, by this point, I had paid my lawyer thousands of dollars, and I honestly didn't feel like paying thousands of dollars and getting nothing for it. So I said yes, I want to move forward with the international hold. About a month later, the hold was granted, and the US military was informed of this. 2 months after the criminal case was over, the soldier was sentenced to 90 days in jail. Now, by this point, the soldier had been moved onto the base into his barracks by his commander. I remember the day I was informed. The military police handed him over to the local authorities to begin his 90-day jail sentence. Now, did I mention he still owed me $80,000? Now, I heard nothing for a year, and then one day I got a call from his commander. His commander wants me to make a statement in regards to the case. So I go in and I make the statement. During the statement, I find out the US military was in the process of chaptering the soldier out of the US military. The commander also informed me that he was close to coming up with the money to pay me so he could have the international hold lifted. The commander also asked me if my lawyer would be willing to make a statement. I contacted my lawyer, who has also made a statement about the facts of the case. A few weeks later, his ex-wife contacted me, and when this all started, I knew he was married, so I guess his wife decided to divorce him. She informed me that her ex-husband had the money and needed the details on how to pay me. I provided her the details, and a few days later, I got paid. I then told him that the money came through. She then asked me to send a receipt so he could have the international hold lifted and return to the United States. I asked her how he got the money, and she said he maxed out his credit card and also had family help him out. Also, during the conversation, I had found out the army had chartered him out of the military. I sent her the receipt, and that was the last I ever heard from his side. Now, at this point, I'm still overseas, and that guy is back in the United States. He most likely has a criminal record, which means he wouldn't even be allowed past immigration. Plus, since then, I've taken a new job, and I've definitely moved. And honestly, hopefully this guy learned his lesson that you can't just sucker punch someone and try and get away with it. Wow, that guy crossed the line. He literally punched you over a fender bender. I mean, I've heard of road rage before, but that is honestly so extreme. There's no reason to get in a fight over that. This very easily could have been fixed. It didn't need to escalate to this kind of violence. Like, seriously, that's not okay. And then he has the audacity to not only break his orders, but also insult you inside of the store. Like, come on, this guy is so childish. He should have just taken his punishment and moved on with his life. Like, seriously, he made this a bigger deal than it needed to be. So really, I don't blame you for taking the steps you needed to take. This guy was so far out of line. There was no reason for him to attack you like that, and the fact that he was making this worse for himself is literally his own fault. You tried to give him the benefit of the doubt. You tried to be the nice guy and not pursue criminal charges. But this guy seriously didn't want to learn his lesson, and he has nobody else to blame except for himself. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also, go to amithejerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. Am I the jerk for firing my brother from my business after he proposed to his girlfriend at my wedding? Here's what happened. So, for a bit of background, I own a plumbing company and hired my brother 3 years ago. He was jobless after the pandemic, and I offered for him to come work for me. He was 22 years old at the time and is now looking to become a master plumber and start his own business. At my wedding, in which he was my best man, he decided that during his speech, he would give all of us a big surprise and decided to propose to his longtime girlfriend. My wife and I were appalled. We both felt like he stole the shine from our day. Everyone else in our families were so excited and kept taking pictures with her and looking at the ring, etc. So I decided to fire him the next day. He still doesn't understand why, and he claims that I'm being selfish and irrational, and our parents somehow agree. They're saying that business should be separate from our personal lives, but I just can't overlook what he did and how he ruined our day. Am I overthinking this? For clarification, he will be getting severance. He is still my brother, and I wouldn't let him lose his home over this. But as a small business, I can't imagine seeing him every day at work, especially not now at least. Fast forward, and I did reach out to him and had plans to later speak to him in person, so we will see where that goes. But in the meantime, am I the jerk for firing my brother after he proposed at my wedding? Honestly, I can kind of see both sides of this, but in my opinion, I don't think you're the jerk. Your stupid brother really thought it would be okay to propose to his girlfriend in the middle of your wedding? Like, are you kidding me right now? That is so inappropriate. Like, seriously, what is wrong with him? That is not okay. I know if I was in your shoes, I would be utterly furious if he did that to me. And there is no way I would take that sitting down. There's no way in the world. And I don't blame you. How could you look at him every day at work and try and go back to some normality? And the fact that your parents are not seeing why this is such a toxic thing to do is honestly baffling to me. How can they seriously be okay with this when you literally were in the middle of being married and he is intentionally trying to steal your spotlight? This is not you being selfish. This is literally your day, and you had every right to celebrate your future marriage. So no, you're not the jerk in this situation. I completely understand where you're coming from, and I don't blame you for not wanting to deal with him at your work. But the moral of this story is seriously, don't propose at another person's wedding. It's lame, it's tacky, and it's honestly incredibly disrespectful. My entitled supervisor demands that I no longer take any more overtime to fix or work on anything while at work. So I maliciously comply. And as a result, 3 separate machines that are crucial to our job shut down entirely, causing thousands of dollars in lost profit, as well as many headaches on the side of management. Here's what happened. Years ago, I used to work for a plastic injection company in my hometown. It wasn't a huge company, but they had 2 plants in my state, as well as 2 in 2 other states, and 1 in the United Kingdom and 1 in Germany. So this company really wasn't that small. It was a 24-hour production facility, which means the machines run 24/7, except from December 23rd to January 2nd. I was one of the 2 delivery drivers who moved finished products from the plant to a nearby warehouse and brought raw materials and packaging supplies back to the plant. On a good day, I'd get 4 to 5 back and forth trips done in a 12-hour day. On my last run back to the warehouse, I'd always go around to the floor people and make sure they had what they needed just to make it through the night. The driver was the only floor position that wasn't 24 hours, and I also wanted to make sure that nothing would shut down. Well, sometimes they would forget something, and after my last run, I'd always have to go back. I wasn't complaining. I would get an hour or 2 of overtime every few shifts, so everything ran fine. But one day, my supervisor pulls me aside and says I need to stop taking overtime. Now, I explain why I'm taking overtime, but he doesn't care. No more overtime ever. So I say, okay, and we just go about our day. Near the end of my shift, I'm about 15 minutes shy of being able to clock out, and I'm just finishing up packing up my truck to do the next morning run. And that's right when one of the floor people comes over and tells me he forgot something. I say to him, sorry, no can do. I'm not allowed any more overtime to go and pick up the material. Now, apparently, if I didn't do it, 3 machines would shut down overnight. Now, if any of you have worked in plastic injection, you know these machines get so hot, they melt the plastic being injected. If they have no material flowing in them, they have to get shut down or they will get too hot. It can take hours for them to cool down, and they have to be started from a cold state when you go to reboot them. So if it runs out of material, production has to stop, the machine has to take about 10 to 12 hours to cool down, and then it has to heat back up. Now, this is all very unfortunate, but I've got to follow my orders. So I clock out and I go home. The next morning rolls around and I am called into the plant supervisor's office. And this guy is my supervisor's boss and is one of the owners of the entire company. He is shaking mad because just as my coworker predicted, 3 machines shut down overnight and were going to be out of commission until nearly 2 p.m. that afternoon. He was going to fire me on the spot, but gave me a chance to explain myself. When I told him what I used to do and what my supervisor had told me to do, he let out a big sigh and told me to go back to the floor, and that if I need to take overtime just to keep the machine from going offline, I should just do it from now on. Now, shortly after that, my main supervisor was called into his office. Now, unfortunately, he is the son of one of the other owners, so they didn't fire him. But after that, I never got yelled at about taking overtime ever again. Wow, that supervisor was really dumb. If he had any sense about him, he would have been like, yes, please take the overtime. Please make sure that we're still running and we can still do our jobs. Like, this guy honestly did not know what he was doing. He probably thought you were trying to work the system and he was catching you in the act or something like that, when in reality, you're probably one of the main players that keeps that place running in the first place. And boy, did he learn that really quickly as well. And while it is kind of disappointing that this guy didn't get fired, bothered, and honestly, in this situation, nepotism really sucks, it is really nice that you never got bothered ever again, because your supervisor was a complete moron, and now you get to enjoy the fruits of having overtime basically whenever you want. Am I the jerk for turning down a bridesmaid that I was assigned to at a wedding after she was determined to hook up with me at the end of the night? Here's what happened. One of my good friends from college was getting married. We'll call him Tom, that's not his real name. And we will call his wife Liz, also not her real name. And my friend asked me to be one of his groomsmen. I was honored because I hadn't seen him in a while since I live across the country. When I arrived to his city, I was assigned a bridesmaid. We'll call her Kelly. Now, Kelly is a lovely woman. However, I think we were only assigned to each other because we are both black. Liz starts telling me that we are both single and perfect for each other, but there was nothing to indicate that at all besides us both just being black. I should also add that Liz had a lot more bridesmaids than Tom had as groomsmen. The first night the entire wedding party went out, and it became clear that Kelly wanted to hook up. I was not into her at all, so I kindly turned her down. She then starts interrogating me as to why. I try to give a generic answer, but she starts listing off all of the reasons why we would be so perfect for each other. I end up saying that I don't do the whole short-term type of thing, and as we both live in completely different states, there is no future here. She ends up cooling off, but then tells me that she respects me more for that, and that I am a stand-up guy, and the type of guy that she is looking for. During the rest of the time we were there, one of the other unmatched brides, we'll call her Jen, starts messaging me privately, and we hit it off. The next day, the wedding ceremony goes well, we have the reception, and me and Kelly do our entrance together, and then we dance together for a little bit. After a bit, I go to the bar, and Jen and I start to dance. At this point, Kelly is giving me dirty looks, but I just ignore it and continue to have a good time. All is going well until when I am at the bar, Kelly and Liz confront me and start saying that me dancing with Jen is inappropriate. They start saying she is too young for me and that it looks really creepy. For reference, I'm 32 years old and she is 24, about to turn 25. So I say to them, oh, it's okay. Me and Jen are just like friends. Liz at this point is angry with me and starts saying that Jen is in college. She's going for her master's degree and that this is her wedding and she doesn't want to see that. Then Kelly starts to say that I must have a thing for white women. At this point, I realize that there is no logical argument that I can make. I tell Kelly and Liz that I really enjoyed the wedding, but I need to go to bed early for my flight the next day. So I leave and I go to my hotel. 15 minutes later, Jen leaves early. And 5 minutes after Jen came up, we both get kicked out of the wedding party chat. I later found out from Tom that Kelly was crying her eyes out and that I messed up the night for Liz as well. He told me that he isn't mad at me because he told Liz from the start that Kelly isn't going to be my type, but instead, Liz really wanted to set Kelly up. At this point, I feel terrible that I made it so Liz was not able to enjoy her special night. But when it comes to Kelly, I just wish that she would understand that no means no. First and foremost, this is honestly ridiculously crazy. They only matched you with Kelly because of your skin color. That is honestly really weird to me, and that's so disrespectful. And it was all under the guise of saying, okay, let's just try and match you up with somebody. I'm gonna be matchmaker and get Kelly a date. Like seriously, what are you doing? This is like some next level crazy. The original poster made it very clear. I'm not interested in hooking up with Kelly at the short term. I don't want to get with her, and honestly, this is really weird. And also, they can't tell the original poster who he can and cannot dance with. He had every right to dance with that lady. There was nothing wrong with it, and honestly, them trying to be like, wow, you're really weird. You have a thing for white women. Like, what are you talking about? They were having fun and they were just enjoying themselves. It's not like the original poster's married to Kelly. He doesn't even like her. So seriously, I don't think you're the jerk in this situation, but instead, I think the wife is incredibly messed up and also a massive jerk for trying to set you up. My mom calls me constantly throughout the day, forcing me to stay on the phone with her for over 5 hours at a time, all because she's grieving the loss of a family member. And at this point, I seriously don't know what to do. So this past week, my mom lost her father. Although I can't begin to understand what she is feeling, I did lose my dad when I was 18. With that being said, since he passed away, my mom has been calling me 10 plus times a day, and I often spend 3 to 5 hours on the phone talking to her about my dad and her missing him. Last night, she said I sounded rude, and I finally snapped. I said to her, not to be rude, but you have called me 16 times today, and I've spent 5 hours on the phone with you today, and I just don't know what to say anymore. It wasn't right, but I'd spent so much time on the phone or just waiting for the phone to ring again that I was just so done. She yelled at me and said that I need to be there for a family member in crisis, and that she would support me and stay on the phone with me all day if I needed it. it, while also saying that it hurts that I won't do the same for her. This morning, she even doubled down and keeps texting me about how I need to learn kindness and how I should support her while she is in crisis, and I honestly just don't have it in me. I can't support someone who is demanding all my time. I have a life too, and she just doesn't care. Like, she even makes those snarky comments, saying stuff like, "I'm sorry my pain and hurt is cutting into your time." But it's like, I'm in school or at work. I feel like I'm a horrible person for feeling this way, but it is just too much on me mentally. How do I set boundaries with her? And how do I make her listen? Am I being unreasonable, or does this seem like way too much? What should I do? I do not think you're being unreasonable at all. Your mom is not only guilt-tripping you into staying on the phone for 3 to 5 hours at a time, but she's also calling you obnoxiously and treating you like her therapist, which honestly, it kind of sounds like she needs one of those. I mean, I understand that she's grieving, but the way she's going about trying to figure that grief out is really invading your life. So personally, I think it's time to start setting boundaries. Tell her that no, you're not going to answer at the drop of a hat, and she can't call you multiple times throughout the day. Maybe set up like a window from 5 to 6 o'clock at night where she can talk to you and have some kind of conversation. Because what she's doing right now is really invasive and really weird. I mean, she's calling more than 10 times a day and spending hours on the phone. I don't know about you, but I got stuff to do during the day, and I can't just spend that on the phone trying to console my mother, who is clearly inconsolable. I mean, I'm surprised you even put up with this for as long as you did. So hopefully some kind of boundary can be set up between you and your mom, because right now she's being really weird, and that's not fair for you or your life in the slightest. An entitled Karen attacks me after I leave a negative review for her toy store, shoving me out the store and forcing both of us to call the police. And now I'm stuck unsure if I'm the jerk in this situation or if I should have done things differently. Here's what happened. The following story also came from the Am I the Jerk subreddit. Check the links in the description if you would like to submit your own story. So this happened about a week ago. My husband, who's a 27-year-old male, as well as myself, a 27-year-old female, recently moved across the country to this much quieter town and started looking for small businesses to go to. One day, we found what looked to be an interesting toy store. So while I watched our 1.5-year-old son, my husband went to go check it out. When he got there, the lady running the store, who we later found out to be the owner, started acting rather odd towards my husband. She began acting suspicious of him and rather rude. All the while, he tried to just be nice, thinking the lady might cool down after a moment or two, but when she asked if he was looking for something, he said he was looking to price check and look around, maybe see if they had an item he was specifically looking for. He even mentioned a competitor in town and that he had price checked their prices earlier in the day. Somehow that seemed to set her off, and she began going on about how they send people to spy on her, take pictures of her store, items, and prices, and that they are just greedy. In the next moment, she suddenly turned on him, ranting and saying he was probably just another one of their spies, all coming in just to steal from her. At that moment, he decided to just find something small and just leave, still trying to be pleasant, but also just wanting to get out of there. She then snapped at him, yelling at him to just go and leave, to just take the item and get out of there. He was so surprised and said he wanted to pay for it. And again, she snapped and told him to go, so he did just that. Not long after, he called me telling me what happened as he drove home. I was shocked and disgusted by the lady's behavior, so I went online to Google, Yelp, and her store's Facebook page, giving each an honest review of my husband's experience at her business. Not even 30 minutes later, she commented by saying, "First of all, that is not at all what happened. I strongly urge you to discuss what really happened with your husband and enjoy the free gift I gave him. I would highly recommend rethinking your words on the reviews because this is now slander. But thanks for bashing a small business. I bet you feel like a keyboard hero now." I was surprised by this, and I will admit I got really irritated, but thought that maybe there was some kind of miscommunication or misunderstanding of some sort, specifically between her and my husband. So I said to her, "Okay, then explain to me what happened," because he definitely talked to me about what happened. And honestly, this is where things begin to really pop off. She then completely ignored what I just said, and in another comment thread of my review, posted a picture of my husband from what I am guessing in her surveillance system, and said with it, "Thank you so much for whatever you told your wife. I hope you really enjoy your free gift." And again, I got really irritated, but I also noticed something in that moment. She wasn't saying what really happened. So I responded with, "Oh, so you're avoiding my question. What is your side of the story? What happened?" Not long after that reply, my husband finally got home. I asked him for the toy, and when he asked why, I said I'm going to return it and ask her what she thinks happened, since she was giving me no straight answer online. Fast forward, and when I got to her store, I was immediately met with hostility. She asked if I was such and such online and wanted to know my name. So I said honestly, yes, that's me. She then asked for us to talk outside, and I said sure, go ahead. I did not speak to her with any form of aggression. I just wanted to return the toy and get clarification. However, I never got the chance to just talk with her, and instead, when I went to put the toy on the register, she blocked my way. She yelled at me, "I don't want you here." And immediately, without any other warning or giving me a chance to respond, she physically shoved me towards the door. In shock of the moment and still just in the mindset of wanting to be rid of this stupid toy, I threw it off to the side and into the store, and I saw it hit the floor just before having the door shut in my face. We both called the cops, and I sat in my car waiting for them while she hid in her locked store. We both talked to them separately, and I told them how she shoved me. She told them that I hit her with a toy first. In the end, I was given an 18-month trespassing citation for her claiming that I hit her with a toy, which honestly, the citation means nothing to me, as both my husband and I have no intention of ever returning, especially after the way she treated us. However, I feel the cops did this to make her happy, as she seemed the most agitated, and just to make sure that I wouldn't come in and contact her ever again, which I agreed with and I understood. They just wanted to make sure there was no further conflict and that this didn't escalate any further. The officers did say, however, that I shouldn't have made a personal situation public. I didn't argue, but I thought this was odd. I mean, I posted in her review section our experience at her store. Isn't that what a review section is for? The next day, I noticed on both my Google review and my Facebook review that she stated, "We believe the authorities handled this situation appropriately, and it was much to our satisfaction." I ended up responding in kind by saying, "I also agree the authorities handled it well. After all, we had no intentions of returning after how we were treated. Nor do we intend to after the 18 months are up." But after thinking on it for some time, I think the both of us got worked up over a misunderstanding, even though I don't know what set you off first at my husband. Now, I'm still willing to hear your side of the story, as that was half of my intention yesterday, alongside returning your toy. If you're willing to, you can direct message me and talk. If not, I understand. And this will be the last time you will hear from my husband and myself. I will also be keeping my 1-star review up, as that is an honest experience of what happened at your store. Later on, I thought back on the events and I realized something. If I did supposedly hit her with a toy, why was no assault charge made? I feel it's because she didn't want to turn her surveillance recordings over, showing that she had laid her hands on me first. However, we do not plan to take her to court for assault either, because we feel it may be too much trouble and way too difficult to try and force her to release the footage. A few days later, we noticed her Facebook page had blocked me, and seeing through a friend's account, we saw that she had removed and hidden reviews from there. However, on all the reviews on other sites that I had put up, those negative reviews were still there. And lastly, we noticed that on her Google page, she had roughly 7 negative reviews saying the same thing. So honestly, are we the jerks in this situation? What should we do? Honestly, I really wish you had your phone with you and you recorded that interaction going into that store. That's honestly the first thing I would have done. That would have cleared up all of this. Because of course, she's not going to give over her footage. She's not going to say you assaulted her, because that could very easily be proved otherwise by her footage. She literally didn't have a leg to stand on. Like seriously, this lady has some issues. She came at your husband and then you physically? Like good lord, that is not okay. So to answer your question, no, you are not the jerk here. This lady was totally out of line. Like she was not only paranoid from the get-go about your husband, but she was also hyper-aggressive, literally because you were sharing the truth online and it made her look bad. And you know that got under her skin. You know for a fact that she absolutely hated that negative review. That probably hurt her way more than anything else you could have done. And you know what? You found other reviews that corroborated your evidence. So trust me, it's not just you. This lady has a problem, and if anything, her business is probably going to shut down eventually. So nope, you are not the jerk. You didn't do anything wrong, and this lady is absolutely insane. And hopefully her business fails sooner than later. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also, go to amithejerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. This next one came from the Am I the Jerk podcast subreddit. Check the links in the description if you would like to submit your own story. Am I the jerk for divorcing my cheating wife after she cheated on me with a coworker? Here's what happened. Now, before we go any further, all names in this story are completely fake. Well, the title says it all. The moment I discovered my wife Sarah's infidelity is for forever etched in my memory. It was a typical evening, and I had returned home from work due to feeling unwell. As I walked into our house, a sense of unease washed over me, prompting me to investigate what had been bothering me for weeks. My suspicion had been growing steadily, fueled by subtle changes in Sarah's behavior and the distant look in her eyes. Deep down, I knew something was amiss, but I wanted to trust her completely. However, on that fateful evening, my intuition got the better of me. I made my way to our study, where Sarah often spent time on her computer. As I approached, I noticed her quickly minimize a chat window on the screen. Alarm bells rang in my head as I realized that she was trying to hide something from me. The sense of betrayal intensified, and I mustered the courage to confront her about it. With trembling hands, I asked Sarah to show me what she had been hiding. At first, she hesitated and tried to deflect, but the desperation in my voice and the tears welling up in my eyes left her with no choice but to reveal the truth. She confessed to having an affair with her coworker Steve for several months. The words hung heavily in the air, piercing through my heart like a dagger. The pain was excruciating, as if my entire world had crumbled in an instant. My mind raced with a whirlwind of emotions. Anger, sadness, and disbelief all vied for dominance. In that moment, the trust we had built over a decade of marriage shattered irreparably. The foundation upon which our relationship stood had crumbled, leaving behind nothing but a hollow shell of what once was. I knew then that I couldn't continue the marriage, not after such a profound betrayal. As the days passed, I sought solace and clarity by staying with my parents. The pain was unbearable, but it allowed me to reflect on the situation and consider my options. The more I pondered, the more convinced I became that divorce was the only path forward. The breach of trust was too deep, and I couldn't envision a future where I couldn't fully trust Sarah again. With a heavy heart, I made the agonizing decision to file for divorce. Sarah pleaded with me for another chance, promising change and expressing remorse for her actions, but deep down, I knew that rebuilding the trust that we once had was an impossible task. Throughout the divorce proceedings, Sarah's pleas continued, but my resolve remained unyielding. I wanted to break free from the pain and betrayal that had consumed our relationship. It was a painful and emotional journey, but I knew it was the right choice for my own well-being. Months later, the divorce was finalized. Sarah was left devastated, and I felt a mix of relief and sorrow. The weight of the past slowly lifted from my shoulders, allowing me to begin the process of healing and moving forward. In the midst of rebuilding my life, I cautiously opened myself up to the possibility of love once again. And it was during this time that I met Jenny, a remarkable woman who embodied the qualities I had longed for in a partner. Her kindness and honesty and unwavering loyalty helped restore my faith in love. Jenny became my rock, supporting me through the healing process and showing me that love could be pure and genuine. With her by my side, I rediscovered happiness and fulfillment. We forged a deep connection, and a year later, we celebrated our marriage, grateful for the love and joy that we found in each other. As for Sarah, her whereabouts and actions became inconsequential to me. While rumors reached me that she had moved away, I made a conscious choice not to keep tabs on her. My focus shifted towards my own happiness, the well-being of my new family, and the pursuit of a life that is fulfilling. Reflecting on the situation, seeking revenge was initially a part of my emotional response. However, I came to realize that revenge would not bring me true happiness or closure. Divorcing Sarah, on the other hand, allowed me to break free from the pain and betrayal, paving the way for a brighter future. Today, I am finally content with my life. Jenny's love and the family we've created bring me immeasurable joy. I am grateful for the strength I found within myself and for the blessings that have come my way. While the past held moments of intense pain, it has shaped me into a resilient individual who values trust, loyalty, and personal happiness above all else. Wow, this story had a great ending at the end of the day. Obviously, you're not the jerk for divorcing your wife for cheating on you. If I was in your shoes and I experienced something like that, I think I would also be devastated and really want to get away from her. I mean, you saw right away that this is just not going to work. There's no way you can even begin to try and repair this, and it was better to get out of that relationship while you could and move on to somebody who really would love you. Because what Sarah did to you was unacceptable. She cheated on you behind your back with a coworker, and now she's probably wondering, well, was it worth it? And I can guarantee you that the answer is a resounding no. So good for you for moving on and finding a better life, because Sarah betrayed your trust, and from the sounds of it, it looks like your new wife is going to treat you a lot better than Sarah ever could. My boyfriend is giving me the silent treatment, all because he's embarrassed of his actions. And honestly, at this point, I seriously don't know what to do. My boyfriend and I have been together for 2 years, and we just moved in together a few months ago. I'll preface this by saying that we went to a football game earlier, and he had quite a bit to drink. He stopped stopped when we got home so he could sober up. That way we could go see his friends tonight. But he still seemed a bit tipsy when this whole thing went down. About an hour ago, we were getting ready to go see his friends. He was in the bathroom and all of a sudden I hear him freak out. Apparently, our dog had gone pee on the floor in the bathroom. About a half hour prior to this, she had been staring at us in a needy sort of way, which she does literally 24/7, making it hard to decipher what she needs, if anything. So I thought that maybe she needed to go potty, but he didn't think so because she had just gotten back from the dog park about an hour before this. He started yelling at her in a lighthearted way, but I told him to stop because she was trying to tell us she needed to go to the bathroom, and neither of us took her out. It was our fault that she had an accident. She's the sweetest, most well-behaved dog. I said that she can't tell whether or not he's playfully yelling at her. All she hears is him raising his voice at her, which clearly scared her because she ran out of the bathroom with her tail tucked between her legs, and she was shaking at that. He stopped yelling at her, went downstairs to grab our food delivery. Then when he came back upstairs, he came over to where me and the dog were. I was sitting at the dining room table and she was sitting underneath me. He again playfully raised his hand like he was about to hit her, and she was cowering underneath me. I became livid. I yelled at him, "What are you doing?" He laughed and said he was just kidding, as if our dog was supposed to know he wasn't actually going to hit her. He has a dark sense of humor, especially when he drinks, but this was absolutely unacceptable. It left a horrible taste in my mouth. After this, we didn't say anything to each other. I ate my dinner at the kitchen counter while he ate behind me at the dining table. He was eating spaghetti and was very loudly slurping his noodles. He's eaten spaghetti in front of me many times, and he's never done that, so I figured that he was just trying to further irritate me. At first, I let it slide, but after the 5th time, I peered back at him and I said, "Do you seriously have the audacity to slurp your noodles?" He sarcastically looks at me and says, "Wow, sorry." I continued eating, and a couple minutes later, he started loudly belching, all while I was still clearly eating. I looked at him again, and he was like, "Geez, sorry, I can't do anything right." Look, I'm not offended by burping normally, but slurping your food and burping while someone is eating in front of you is so grating and entirely bad-mannered to me. Then he passive-aggressively started talking to our dog, saying something like, "Should we just stay home tonight?" And then went and changed into his pajamas and proceeded to not talk to me after that. After we finished eating, he stomped off to the bedroom and slammed the door. I immediately followed him in and asked what his problem was. He didn't respond for a while, and then he said, "I don't like the way you talk to me. You seem annoyed." I said I was annoyed at the time, but I wanted to move on so we don't ruin our weekend yet again. This is the 3rd time he's chosen to silently pout and stomp around like a child, mind you. You know, rather than communicate, and this is what he does in an argument ever since we moved in together. I am beyond fed up with it. The last time was 3 or 4 weeks ago, and the silent treatment lasted for 4 full days. I just stood in the doorway waiting for a response, and he kept ignoring me and watching TV. Occasionally, he would shoot me a dirty look and snap and say, "What do you want me to say?" I said, if this relationship is going to continue, we need to start communicating about issues as soon as they arise, not ignore each other for days on end. He said, "I'm embarrassed and I don't want to talk to you," and then motioned for me to get out. So I shut the door, and I've been sitting in the living room ever since then. He's come out 3 times to get something from the kitchen and just keeps shooting me dirty looks and not talking to me. As I said, this is a routine thing that happens during arguments, and I'm beyond fed up. I feel like I'm dating a child, not a grown man who's turning 30 next month. What should I do or say to him? I'm so annoyed that this is happening again, especially when I'm about to leave and spend the night at my parents'. I don't even know if this relationship is worth salvaging. What should I do? Honestly, your boyfriend is being incredibly immature. Giving someone the silent treatment and refusing to talk to them all because of something that you did and the stupid stuff you decided to pull off is honestly so toxic. There's no reason to act like that. Like, seriously, that's inappropriate. You literally just said, "Hey, stop burping and belching and don't pretend like you're gonna hit the dog." And by the way, what he did to that dog was awful. The original poster's right. I don't think that dogs can really understand the nuance of any kind of sarcasm or stuff like that. So if you raise your voice at them, they probably think, "Oh yeah, you really are mad at me." Or if you fuss at them or make them feel bad, they're gonna feel that and they're gonna think you're upset. So I don't blame the original poster for being like, "Stop it, what are you doing?" Let's also remember that this guy's almost 30 years old, and his way of dealing with problems is to give the silent treatment. That is so immature, it's not even funny. So honestly, if you want any kind of positive change, it's definitely gonna have to start with him. He needs to learn how to communicate better, or at least just own up to his mistakes, because the way he's doing it right now is honestly so toxic, and you do not deserve that in the slightest. Am I the jerk for fainting at my aunt's wedding and practically ruining ruining it all in one go. Here's what happened. So I'm a 21-year-old female, and I attended my aunt's wedding a few weeks ago. I was not part of the wedding. I was just a guest, which I was fine with. Before the wedding, everyone was advised to drink lots of water and eat something beforehand because it was going to be extremely hot that day. The wedding started at 5:00 p.m., and I had absolutely nothing to eat or drink up until then, except maybe a granola bar because I was extremely busy that day. So when it was time for the wedding, I was already tired and hungry. About 30 minutes into the wedding, which was a church too, by the way, I was feeling uneasy and lightheaded, so I excused myself to go to the washroom. As I was walking, I got the feeling like I was about to collapse. The next thing I can remember was coming to and seeing lots of people surrounding me, including the bride and groom. Apparently, when I fainted, I fell onto the photographer who was crouched down near me. Not only that, but he dropped the camera lens and broke it. To be honest, I don't even remember seeing the photographer, but I may have been too dizzy or something like that to even see him in the first place. Now, the wedding was a bit of a cheaper one, so the photographer was a family friend of the groom's who only had one camera with him. The bride was just in tears that she won't have any good pictures from her wedding. The photographer insisted that he could drive home and grab a different one, but it would unfortunately take too long to do that. The bride was indeed mad at me, but I feel like it was a bit harsh as it was extremely embarrassing for me already. Fainting never even crossed my mind as something that would happen at all. Now, they did get pictures, but unfortunately it was on their cell phones. So am I the jerk for fainting at this wedding and practically ruining it? What should I do? So honestly, I can kind of see both sides of this. Obviously, you didn't mean to faint. I mean, that wasn't really in your control. I mean, nobody shows up to a wedding and is like, hey, I'm definitely gonna faint right about now. But you yourself did say that, hey, I didn't eat or drink all day, even though you knew it was gonna be hot. That part is absolutely on you. Nobody could have predicted that you were gonna pass out. Nobody could have planned for that, and honestly, it really was kind of a freak accident. But I think this could have been avoided if you just drank some water and ate some food. You should not have ignored that advice. Like, clearly the worst thing happened to you specifically. You fainted at the wedding, and now they're never gonna have really good pictures of their wedding. And that's not fair. That literally is not fair in the slightest. Now, don't get me wrong, you didn't do this intentionally, and of course that photographer is really cheap for only bringing one lens with them, but overall you probably should have planned this better, and you should have been more attentive to the advice that you were given. An entitled jerk tries to ruin my life by spreading false rumors about me at the church I used to go to, and after being so hurt and emotionally destroyed, I decided to get some revenge, and exposed him for the creep and the weirdo he is, and effectively ruined his life and his reputation forever. Here's what happened. So about 6 to 7 years ago, I was a student at a conservative Christian college. I had attended the same Bible-believing church since I was a small child. It was large, about 1,000 members, but not really one of those mega churches that you might find. The church had been an enormous part of my life for as long as I could remember. I played piano for the youth choir, I preached at the children's church service, I drove the church bus to pick up other children, etc. I did all of this for free too, by the way, not even getting reimbursed for any expenses. During my senior year in college, we got a new minister of music, education, and youth. Now, this guy was as charming as an ice cream sundae with razor blades in it. I'll call him Mr. Charming for the sake of the story. And all of the deacons and their wives thought that he walked on water. He was straight up an authoritarian jerk. In his first meeting with the church youth group, he announced that he had been hired to straighten out the youth group itself. One of his favorite sayings was to say, "When I tell my disciples jump, the only questions they'll be asking is how high and how far." Now, the adults loved him, but the youth absolutely hated him. Within a few weeks, half of the high school and college students, all of those without parents in the church, basically quit coming to church. Most of the youth directors would have gotten into trouble over this, but he had the audacity to proclaim in front of the entire congregation that he had eliminated all the thorny ground from the youth group, and that the pastor and all of the deacons loved him for it. He didn't waste any time going after what he really wanted though. He wanted the pastor's job. The pastor was about 60 years old. Within a few weeks of Mr. Charming's arrival, rumors started circulating about the pastor's health. He was an avid runner and a cyclist, and apparently he just didn't seem to be as mentally sharp as he used to be. The worst of all, however, was the accusation that the pastor was really too liberal for the church. And in my denomination, it was a kiss of death to even be suspected of being a liberal. Now, none of these accusations made any sense, but people kept talking about them. I have no idea why the pastor didn't find out, or maybe he did find out and was just too scared to do anything about it. Now, in some denominations like Catholic or Methodist,
list, the denomination assigns a pastor, but not my church. Each church calls the minister. This guarantees that every pastor always walks a razor edge, meaning that the slightest slip up and you are definitely out. And you don't even need to slip up. Maybe you even do the right thing and it still offends enough people, and then just like that, you're out. Or in this case, maybe just like the pastor, some creep just lies about you and decides that he wants your job. And since the church often owns your house, your entire family is suddenly homeless and destitute. Eventually though, I became a target, and I honestly still don't know why. A couple of months after starting to work for my church, Mr. Charming called me and informed me that my services were no longer needed. So I was out when it came to youth choir, children's church, as well as bus ministry. In fact, he said he didn't even want me to participate in any of these functions at all, not even go to Sunday morning worship service. I later found out that members of his family had been hired by the church at very nice rates of pay to perform these functions that I'd been doing for free for such a long time. His wife got paid more for playing a beat-up piano at the 1-hour youth choir rehearsal than the main organist got paid for playing the adult choir rehearsal, plus Sunday mornings and Sunday evenings. I mean, the wife could barely pick out the notes on a piano. This lady radiated bitterness, resentment, and repressed anger, but she rarely said anything. She just sat there and glared, which was somehow even creepier than when she spoke. Now, when this happened, I was very hurt emotionally, so I dropped by the pastor's office and tearfully asked him what I'd done wrong. I couldn't get a straight answer, except for the fact that he told me that people are saying things about me, and that if I wanted to get a good recommendation from him to our denomination's minister school, then I'd better shut up and do what I'm told. So I started asking all of my church friends what people were saying about me. Everyone, and I mean everyone, said to me, "Well, I didn't want to tell you, and I don't believe it, but here's what I heard." And according to the rumor mill, I had gotten my girlfriend pregnant, forced her to get rid of the child, if you know what I mean, and that I'd been arrested for possession of the herb, and my dad had to pay a bunch of money just to keep people quiet. I mean, these were the rumors that were being spread. So I did what the pastor told me to do. I never darkened the door of that church ever again. It really hurt my feelings. I had devoted my life to that church since I was a little kid, but I had to have the pastor's recommendation to get into the minister's school that I wanted to go to, and the pain was just unbearable even driving by the church. So I decided to keep my distance. But I started thinking about Mr. Charming. Anyone who was that evil had to have some kind of past, and it probably wasn't a good one. I knew that just before working for my church, he had worked at a large church in the same denomination in a small town about 50 miles away. That church was actually about twice the size of my church, so he had moved from a big church to the same job at a smaller church. I mean, is that a bad career move? Is he running away from something? There was something rotten in Denmark, and it smelled like an opportunity for me. Now, as luck would have it, one of my uncles and his family lived in that same small town, although none of my family attended Mr. Charming's former church. So I called one of my cousins, told her my story, and enlisted her as a co-conspirator. We'll call her Anne. Anne is not her real name. The next Sunday morning, Anne and I attended Sunday school and morning worship at Mr. Charming's old church. Although Anne had never been a member of that church, it was a small town where everybody knew everyone, so she knew most of the people there. She started asking about Mr. Charming, and we got an earful. Every one of her friends said that Mr. Charming was a world-class creep. He would flirt with and even make suggestive comments to all the girls in the youth group, even those in junior high. Mind you, this guy was 40 plus years old. He had a wife and 3 children of his own. And then there was the touching. Never anything obvious or illegal, but he loved to put his hands all over the young ladies, whenever their parents weren't around, of course. But just like at the former church, the adults loved him because he kept the youth in line. Our investigation went on for several weeks. I kept a low profile as to not arouse any suspicion. Mostly, I just stood around, ate donuts, drank coffee, and talked about football. Anne did most of the work because she knew so many people, and it was perfectly natural for her to attend this church in her hometown, even if it was not the church she usually attended. After church was over, we would go to her house, have a delicious Sunday lunch cooked by my aunt, and then write down everything we had learned. By then, Anne's whole family were in on my investigation. They were as angry as I was about the way I had been treated, and our weekly report made interesting lunchtime conversations. Within a few weeks, I was sure that all I had to do was drive a few of these young ladies and their parents and friends and uncles down to my old church and let them tell their stories to the parents of a few girls in the youth group, and Mr. Charming would become Mr. Unemployed. But it kept kept getting better and better, so Ann and I just kept digging. And I really wanted to keep a low profile if I could, because I didn't want to upset the pastor any more than I already had. He knew a lot of people in the denomination, and he could easily ruin my ministerial career before it even started. Finally, after a month or so, Ann grabbed me by the sleeve and said, "You've got to hear this." She introduced me to a very well-dressed, very large guy, maybe 30 to 35 years old. I'll call him Fred. We slipped off into a Sunday school room where we could not be overheard. It turned out that Mr. Charming had had a multi-year affair with Fred's wife. Fred had kept his cool when he found out, talked with a lawyer, and had spent months gathering evidence. Text messages, voicemails, emails, even photos and videos with Fred's wife and Mr. Charming in them. And let's just say these videos are something of Mr. Charming's own makings. Now finally, Fred confronted his wife. She denied everything, but the evidence was just too much. Fred told her that he wanted a divorce, full custody of the children, their house, his retirement money, his business, her engagement and wedding rings, everything. Even the dog. She hired a lawyer, but laws and courts being what they are in this Bible Belt county, her lawyer told her that if the judge saw the videos, she would be lucky if she ended up in a homeless shelter with all of her worldly possessions under her bunk in a garbage sack. Then Fred turned his attention to Mr. Charming. Fred still sincerely loved his wife, and he was convinced that Mr. Charming had deliberately ruined his marriage. He took Mr. Charming to court and sued him for loss of consortium, and otherwise making him legally miserable would just take too long. And this all happened in the rural Deep South. Many people around here prefer a more direct approach. In the rural counties, the police and any jury of your peers will probably include people who have known you since kindergarten. So if you have a good reason for your actions and you aren't too stupid about it, there are things that you can do. So Fred scheduled an appointment with Mr. Charming in his church office, who did not suspect a thing because Fred was a deacon and his children were in the church youth group. Remember that I said Fred's a big guy? He is 6'6", weighs about 300 pounds, and if there was an inch of fat on him, he hit it really well. He looked like the kind of guy who could pull up a 100-foot oak tree by the roots without even breaking a sweat. Fred told me that he brought several friends with him, and of course he brought the videos. One friend blocked the door, and another unplugged the phone. A third one stood behind Mr. Charming and encouraged him to stay seated in his chair. Fred made Mr. Charming watch about 10 minutes of one of the videos. Then he said calmly to him, "I'm gonna stand here and watch you pack up your stuff, then you're gonna walk out of this building and never show yourself in this town ever again, or I will be back." And when that happened, Mr. Charming did as he was told. A month later, he had a new job at another church, which was my old church, and started ruining another whole set of lives, including mine. Now, Fred actually did not know where Mr. Charming had gone. He had been led to believe that Mr. Charming had moved out of state. He was surprised, gratified, and angered to learn that this scumbag was only 50 miles away. This had all happened just a few months before. Fred was still deeply in love with his wife. They were getting counseling, and he hoped that they could save his marriage. But his hatred of Mr. Charming was still powerful, and has been reignited by my telling him that Mr. Charming was living and working less than an hour away from his wife. And we're talking like Mount St. Helens a few minutes away before the explosion. He presented such a face of restrained rage and vindictiveness that it honestly scared me, and I wasn't even the one that he was mad at. So the next day, being a Monday, I drove back up there and gave him a copy of the directory of my old church. It had home addresses, phone numbers, and email addresses, pretty much for every member of the church. I showed him the pages that listed all of the deacons and other church leaders, and I marked some of the church's major financial donors. I explained my situation with the pastor and asked that my name not be mentioned, to which Fred said, "Oh, that's no problem." Now, the next Sunday comes around, and I could not resist visiting my old church just to see how things were going. And you know what? Mr. Charming was nowhere to be seen, nor was any explanation given about what had happened to him. One weird thing, though, is that the pastor looked absolutely terrified. His voice, usually resonant, loud, and almost musically baritone, trembled during the entire sermon. I slipped in just before the service started and made it a point to sit in the front row of the center pew. The look on his face when he saw me was worth all of my trouble. I didn't know it at the time, but Fred had gotten right to work and done a very thorough job. The whole church had gotten multiple anonymous emails with photos and videos of Mr. Charming and Fred's wife, and this is all in various, well, compromising positions and states of undress, if you know what I mean. Deacons and major donors got emails, plus express express mail packages just for good measure. Mr. Charming and the pastor had been left out. They didn't know anything until the phone calls started pouring in. After the worship service, it did not take long for my church friends to figure out why I was there. It was very gratifying. Now, I was something of a hero, although I kept swearing that I had no idea what they were talking about. Things continued to blow up in my former church for months afterwards. Both the pastor and the pastor of Mr. Charming's old church all almost lost their jobs, and that's because they had lied to my old church's committee of deacons, who had recommended hiring Mr. Charming in the first place, and they also left out the details of why Mr. Charming had left his old job. But somehow they all managed to stay in the pulpits at their churches, although a lot of church members left my former church, which caused some financial problems. Now, there was talk of legal action possibly being made towards the person that sent these pictures and videos, but nobody ever was able to prove that Fred did it. I don't think they tried very hard either. After all, his wife was in the photos and the videos. Both churches really did not want this to become a court case, so overall they just kind of kept quiet about it. I never saw the old pastor ever again. I had lost all the love, trust, and respect that I had in him, and I was sure that he had figured out that I was somehow connected to the whole fiasco. So my chances of having any kind of preaching career in my denomination were precisely zero. By that time, being a pastor like the pastor I used to look up to was the last thing I wanted anyways. I withdrew my application to minister school and eventually completed a doctorate in archaeology at a different grad school. I graduated with honors, and it was at a large, widely respected state university. I've been teaching at a large public university in the Midwest of the United States with summer jobs on archaeological digs in Europe. And honestly, with all things considered, I am so very happy. I had no idea what happened to Mr. Charming after he left my former church, but it didn't matter because I moved to a new, happier, and more meaningful and more enlightened life. Fast forward, and I had one last gratifying event towards this situation. About 6 or 7 years later, I went to pick up a friend at a large downtown urban bus station in the US. Everyone hates this place because not only is it crowded, it is also poorly maintained and filthy. It smells like spoiled garbage mixed with diesel exhaust, and it has seldomly clean public bathrooms. My friend's bus was late, so I stopped by the newsstand to get myself a soda and some candy bar. And who do you think I see was restocking the shelves? That's right, it was Mr. Charming itself. I just sat across from the newsstand and enjoyed my drink and snack. He immediately recognized me and then turned away, but I just sat there and watched him, restocking shelves full of dirty magazines and junk food. And honestly, revenge is a feast that is best enjoyed cold. Yeah, that Mr. Charming guy sounds awful. This guy literally tried to tank your career. He took things away from you that made you happy, you know, stuff that like helped you feel fulfilled in life, and he gave it away to his family so that they could make a quick buck. You weren't getting paid to do all the stuff you were doing at that church, but that guy wanted to take it away from you just to try and make a quick buck for his family members, not to mention the horrible rumors that he spread about you. And honestly, with all things considered, I don't blame you for getting back at Mr. Charming. That guy has a checkered past, and if he didn't want that to be found out, then he shouldn't have come into that new church and basically try to ruin your life. Like seriously, that's his own fault, because at the end of the day, he would probably still be working there if he just played nice and treated people with respect. But instead, he had to run his mouth and try and ruin another group of people, just like he did at his former church. And honestly, with all that in mind and all the awful things he did, he absolutely had exactly what was coming to him. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also, go to AmITheJerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. I made a heart-wrenching mistake 6 years ago by breaking up with the perfect guy, and now I can't find peace at all, and I honestly don't know what to do. So I want to start off by saying that this is a painful memory for me to recount, so bear with me, and I hope some of you can offer insight or advice on how to find peace. A few years ago, from when I was 27 to 29, I was in a loving relationship with a genuinely amazing man. He was the kind of person that lit up the room, always happy, genuinely caring, considerate and playful, sometimes even humorously obtuse, but I always felt happy around him and laughed a lot. Beyond that, he was smart, handsome, and truly dedicated to those he loved. We had an awesome life together for those 2 years. He had a young daughter by the name of Sarah. Sarah is not her real name, and she was around 7 when I met her. She's now 13, and Sarah is from a previous relationship. When he introduced me to her after 5 beautiful months together, our connection was immediate. Sarah was a bright, bubbly girl
girl with a heart of gold. I usually never liked or bonded with kids, but there was something about her spirit. So curious, funny, and mischievous, and very cute. Over time, she began to see me as a maternal figure, especially since her own mother was often too engrossed in her own work to spend any kind of time with her. And also, she found her mom quite serious and very strict. To me, it felt like they never truly bonded. Our little trio had many adventures together. We went on weekend getaways, explored museums, visited parks, and spent countless hours building memories. Yet, beneath the surface, I was battling my own demons, a depression I couldn't understand, and feelings of inadequacy, fueled by the glossy lives I saw on social media. I never told him what I felt. Truthfully, I didn't feel depressed when I was with him. It was when I went back to my New York life I felt it, and I thought it would go away. I was also working in a glamorous corporate job in New York, while he lived a bit out in the suburbs, living a fairly unglamorous life as a data analyst in a small office company. I was making a bit more money than him, despite him being 7 years older than me. The feelings of unsatisfaction never left, and I started going to therapy. Through my therapist, I figured out that I needed to understand myself and my needs way more, and if I didn't, I would never get rid of this feeling. She encouraged and supported my decision that I needed to be on my own and live on my own terms. And possibly the pressure of being a stepmom was simply too soon for me, especially since all my friends in New York were living glamorous lives with a lot of activity involving their nightlife. Basically, I had a major fear of missing out and I needed to experience it. So I broke up with him 3 or 4 weeks before my birthday in 2019. The sight of his broken heart and tears was heart-wrenching. He said some words with the saddest tone ever that's never left me. I remember him saying, "God, I really truly felt like I had everything in my life when I was with you. You don't know how happy you've made me and my daughter. We talk about you all the time." But what really tore me apart was when he revealed that Sarah had been saving half of her allowance for months just to surprise me with concert tickets to see my favorite band. We parted ways after a really painful weekend in September of 2019. I took the entire week off without telling him because I felt so broken. I insisted we maintain no contact. However, we both did a couple brief check-ins during the pandemic. To this day, the gravity of my mistake weighs heavily on my heart. He's found happiness with someone else now, a beautiful and really smart girl who's also my age. While I'm really glad for him, I'm constantly haunted by the hurt I caused them both. I miss him and his daughter so much, and often I dream of them. I miss the family time we had, the hugs when all three of us would cuddle under a blanket and watch a movie, or going out for drives, playing road trip games, or me confusing Sarah with obvious false facts and then slowly seeing her figure out that I was joking. I mean, God, it was so adorable. I wanted so badly to have a baby with him too. I was so stupid back then. And now the new lady gets to enjoy the life I could have had, and it's honestly my own fault. I went down a spiral during lockdowns, and even afterwards, I just dated around casually, filling the void with useless relationships. I haven't really bonded with anyone else. I'm in a situationship that probably will be ending given our recent talks and fights. I have restarted therapy, which is helping, but at the same time, it changes nothing. Part of me really wants to reach out to him and apologize and say how much I regret it and how much I miss them. I so badly want to see them again too. On 3 separate occasions, I have taken an Uber to pass by their house just to see if I could get a glimpse of them, but so far I haven't. Part of me hopes that he will say that he misses me too, and that he'll break up with his current girlfriend for me, but I doubt that he would ever do that. I've been stalking her a bit on social media. She has a great career, she's got a nice smile, she's far better looking than I ever was, and from some of the videos I watched, she seems cute and good-natured. I'm looking for advice on how to come to terms with my past mistakes. How can I find forgiveness and ensure I never let my internal struggles harm someone else ever again? And should I even reach out to apologize in the first place? What should I do? Okay, first off, I think you need to pump the brakes. You broke up with him and yeah, it was a mistake, but you need to respect that he has moved on and gone in a different direction in his life. You broke this guy's heart. Absolutely, that is definitely the fact of the situation. They really loved you and they probably never saw this coming. So while I don't think it's a bad idea to maybe reach out and apologize for breaking his heart, on the other hand, getting your hopes up that he would somehow break up with his current girlfriend just to try and get with you is, in my opinion, really not okay. I personally personally find that to be incredibly unhealthy, and you're only setting yourself up for failure. Like, first off, it's really creepy that you're stalking this new lady, as well as driving by their house slowly just to try and catch a glimpse of something that you don't have in your life. That is really weird, and you definitely need to stop that. But also, looking at the core of the matter, I really don't think he's gonna break up with his current girlfriend just to get back with you. That's really weird, and I just don't see that happening. So honestly, I hope you're able to get through this in a reasonable way, because the way you're approaching this at the moment really does not seem healthy, and I really think you're only going to be setting yourself up for failure. My family was deceived by their landlords, who promised them that after they built a fence for them, they would then sell the house they were renting from these landlords. And after this betrayal and my family getting evicted, I decided to get revenge, costing them thousands of dollars in the process, as well as a lot of heartache, simply because they decided to mess with my family. Here's what happened. So to start things out, this story happened quite some time ago. I have never tried to seek out revenge before, but the way these people treated me and my family was utterly repulsive. And so here we have my first ever revenge story. First though, let's have some setup. My family lived in a house that was owned by, according to one of my family members, benevolent landlords. After they had lived there for 2 years on lease, the lease expired, and so they started living there on a month-to-month basis. My family member by the name of Mary and John, those are not their real name, suggested that they renew their lease, but Mary, being convinced that they had established a relationship of trust with the landlords, insisted that there was no need to do so. And this was definitely the first mistake. Sometime after, there was a storm that knocked over a relatively flimsy chain link fence that was built around the house. Now, because Mary and John kept important things in their yard, they needed a fence. The landlords were looking around for contractors to rebuild the fence, but John had an idea that he felt would be beneficial for everybody. You see, John and Mary really loved this house, and they were hoping to someday buy it off the landlords. And that's something that the landlords had suggested as a possibility from time to time. John suggested that he build the fence instead. He would only charge for the materials required, and he would provide the labor at no cost, all under one condition. The landlords must promise that they have no intention of selling the house. One landlord, we'll call him Benny, not only promised John that the house wouldn't be sold anytime soon, but even went as far as saying that they would only ever consider selling the house to John and Mary. And so a deal was made. John would rebuild the fence more beautiful than it had ever been in its entire lifespan, and Benny and the other landlord would ensure that John and Mary would get to keep living in that house, as well as enjoying the fruits of their labor all the way until the landlords finally decided to sell the house to them. John and Benny agreed upon what the dimensions and material of the fence would be. They decided wood, and they decided on the fence being fairly tall. John bought the materials, and Benny paid John for the expenses. Halfway through building the fence, John asked Benny about whether he wanted certain changes in the backyard that would, alongside the fence, only serve to make the land value skyrocket. Now, when Benny heard this, he said that he would love those changes. But honestly, this was all too good to be true, because the way these landlords treated my family absolutely justified my revenge. Now, this next part is important. John looked Benny in the eye and said in no unclear terms, "If you have any intention of selling this house to someone other than us, tell me now and I will stop this entire project. I'm only interested in building this under the condition that I will be the one to get to enjoy it." Benny responded equally clearly, "You and your family will get to enjoy this home indefinitely. Feel at ease and do whatever you want with this yard." And so the fence was finished, and it was beautiful. And this is the part where I come in. I come to visit my family, and I help them finish this fence, as well as clean up the yard. I wasn't particularly happy about the terms of this agreement, but there was nothing that could be done now. But unfortunately, this is the part where my family gets screwed over, and badly at that. Not so much as a week after the fence was built, Mary gets a call from the other landlord. Let's call her Jane. Jane tells Mary that something unexpected has occurred. You see, her niece is currently on the market for a house, and she really wanted to see this particular house. Mary, who can feel herself getting riled up, asks Jane how this could be happening. The fence is only just finished, and they're now considering selling the house. Jane assures Mary that her niece will most likely not want the house, but that she had to let her see it. Now, I'm not sure about the details about what happened shortly after, but it seems that Jane's niece didn't like the given price of the house, which was now more valuable than it was before, and so she chose not to buy it. Now, it might seem like they're out scot-free, but honestly, this is only the beginning. Benny came to visit John and Mary with something they had always wanted. Suddenly,
Suddenly, the landlords wanted to sell, and an offer was made to my family. Now, my family is not wealthy, and they would have preferred if they had been told well in advance of the intention to sell. Nonetheless, the offer that was presented was not unfair, and my family said yes, which was excellent. But as soon as my family was approved to purchase the house, Benny came back with a change. The landlords no longer wanted to sell the house at the original price. Instead, the price they had in mind had now skyrocketed to roughly the same price as the most expensive house in the area, a price that John and Mary could no longer afford, and certainly more than the house was actually worth. That's not the worst of it though. Suddenly, the landlords needed to sell the house immediately. John said to Benny, "I thought we had a deal." But Benny responded that they suddenly needed the money because of some family members' needs. Later on, the story changed to them no longer needing the money, and then it was Jane who needed the money because of some other piece of completely fabricated garbage. The point being is that they wanted to sell the house now just so they could line their pockets, but they could never stick to a single excuse. Again, John told Benny that they had a deal, and Benny's response was, "I don't remember that. We never got anything in writing, and so we never had a deal." Jane later told me, "A verbal agreement doesn't mean anything." Now, unfortunately, in the eyes of the law, nothing could be proven. We couldn't force them to sell the house to my family at the original price, and we couldn't force them to let my family keep living there. Okay, thought my family, if that's the case, then we want to get paid for the labor we put into the fence. This was not ideal, since they now needed to leave the home they lived in for quite some time, but they knew it wasn't theirs, and they weren't going to put up a fight over it. At this point, they just wanted to get paid for their labor. But you know what? Benny and Jane didn't want to pay. My family members needed that money. Given that they were kicked out on such short notice, the money was needed in order to find a new place to live. Benny and Jane, however, insisted that they had always been fair with the rent, and they simply didn't owe my family legally. I told Benny and Jane that we would just take things to court and have a judge decide the result. Given the fear of a court case, Benny and Jane decided that they would pay my family, but the labor for this gargantuan monstrosity of a beautiful fence just wasn't worth that much more than the materials it was made of. The labor couldn't possibly be that much, they reasoned. Also, they would only pay for the labor for the fence, not for the rest of the work that they had done to the yard. Well, everyone decided to get an estimate. The average we got was $3,000 for labor, with Benny and Jane managing to get one estimate from one of their family members at $350. And that's just an absolute joke. The day to leave arrived, and Benny and Jane paid my family far less than what the labor was actually worth. And eventually, my family left. We lost so much because of that. The effort that went into building this fence with the intention of getting to enjoy having it, and under the agreement that they would keep living there, just to then have it all taken away, and to barely even get paid for the labor. I mean, to get this kind of garbage was just awful. And you know what? To me, that was unacceptable. We simply couldn't win anymore. But I also didn't want them to win either. So this is when I decided to get some revenge. I read up on fences. I learned far too much about what was and wasn't allowed when it came to fences, and I memorized every single rule. I learned when permits were and were not needed. I learned what the allowed dimensions were. I learned about whether fences needed finish. And oh boy, the things I learned about fences. I learned that you don't need a permit if your fence gets damaged, so long as you're rebuilding the same fence. But this was wood, and the old one was chain link. I also learned that the fence needed to be painted, but this one that they built was not. Also, the fence had a very specific height limit, one which this new fence absolutely violated. These people were so happy to stick to the letter of the law when it came to screwing over my family, so I decided that I too would also stick to the letter of the law. Fast forward, and somehow the county found out that this fence was permitless, unpainted, and far too tall. Shortly after the county found this out, Benny and Jane got a visit from the county right before they managed to sell the house, and this is all at their obscene price. And would you know it, their fence was built illegally. Now, sometimes you could just get a permit after the fact, but their fence wasn't allowed to be built in the way that it was. There were no plans, no inspection, nor anything else that the county required. It simply had to come down. My family then got a very angry call. The landlords accused my family of never getting a permit, something that my family literally could not do, given that this was not their property in the first place. Besides, it was the landlords who assumed no permit was needed, and my family knew nothing about how permits worked, so the fence had to be torn down. There goes the money they saved by not paying my family, and they lost their prospective buyer. There goes the money they wanted to make, and the land value of the house absolutely went down. Their price point that they wanted to sell the house at was gone, and they needed to build a new fence, since no one will want to live in this house without some sort of fencing. So now it looks like they'll have to pay for an actual new fence, which includes labor and everything else from an actual contractor. So at the end of the day, we didn't win. But you know what? Neither did these people. And honestly, with all things considered, I will take that revenge any day of the week. Wow, that is honestly so infuriating. Can you imagine building that fence under the false promise that not only will you still be able to live there, but also they're going to try and sell the house to you at the end of it? I mean, Benny and Jane are absolute scumbags in this story. They're the worst kind of people on planet Earth. They went back on their promises and they really pulled a fast one on this family. So good for the original poster for getting revenge. These landlords absolutely had it coming. And if they were simply honest in their dealings, none of this would have happened in the first place. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also, go to AmITheJerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. Am I the jerk for reporting my neighbor's son to the police after he repeatedly trespasses onto my property? Here's what happened. So I live in England. I own my home and I understand I am fortunate, but I also worked hard for it. Any money I received or earned while working part-time till graduation all went straight into my savings account. Most people on my street are social housing tenants. I'm still determining what that is, but they've explained that you're eligible for the scheme if you are on a low income. It's more secure than the private sector, as you mostly get assured tenancies, even though there are different tenancy types. Now, for a while, I got along well with my next door neighbors. We'll call them Emily and Ben. They also have 3 kids who are 13, 9 years old, and 4 years old. But soon enough, I started experiencing a lot of problems from next door. I work from home often, and I could hear shouting next door constantly. Ben is 5'11", and he's quite loud and intimidating, and I could hear the kids screaming and crying. I had asked them to lower their voices daily, and I even explained that I work from home. The next set of problems revolved around the 13-year-old son. I spotted their son climbing over a wall to get into my garden just to get his football back, and honestly, at first I ignored it, but then it happened 10 times in a row. I finally decided to speak with his parents, and I can't remember what was said entirely, but still, all I said to them was basically, I want to talk to you about your son trespassing literally 10 times in my garden. I would appreciate it if you would have him stop doing that, and if he instead would just come to the front and knock on the front door, I could then happily collect his ball for him. The neighbors apologized and said they would make sure their son doesn't do it and would knock instead. But a few days later, their son did it again while I was in my lounge. I walked into my garden, which made him jump, and spoke with him. I told him that I had seen him trespass to collect his ball on various occasions. I told him I had talked to his parents and that trespassing is a crime, and I would appreciate it if he could just come to the front of the house and knock on my door in the future. Well, he didn't say anything and just went back into his garden. I informed his parents and they apologized, but it still continued. I eventually got fed up with it and decided to invest in CCTV finally. I wrote a letter to residents on my road to give them a week's notice that private security footage is being installed at my address, and it will cover my entire garden, and it will also cover my doorway. I also wrote that I'm getting a Ring doorbell camera as well. After installing the cameras, I thought it would stop the kids from trespassing, but unfortunately, it absolutely continued. I saved the footage, I filed a police report against the son for trespassing, and I sent all of the evidence to the police. I knew there was a strong chance that nothing was going to happen, but I just wanted the son to have some responsibility. When my neighbors found out, they were so mad with me, and since then, our relationship has soured. My siblings found out about this and think that I'm a total jerk about this. So honestly, am I the jerk for reporting this kid to the police after I gave him and his parents so many times to correct this behavior? What should I do? I don't think you're the jerk at all. This kid was definitely trespassing on your property just to get a ball that he clearly is kicking into your yard on purpose. Like seriously, he can't just keep it in his own yard? Why is he constantly kicking it in your yard? Like that's unfair and that's really annoying. And what if this kid breaks something or worse, gets injured? I bet those parents would blame you immediately for any injury their son gets. So seriously, I would have done the exact same thing. I would have set up cameras and absolutely done the same thing. Because the parents are clearly not doing anything to fix this. They're saying, oh, I'm sorry, but they're not correcting their son. Like, come on. Your apologies does nothing. This kid is still breaking into my backyard to get something he can clearly have me get instead. So overall, you are not the jerk
jerk. I would not feel bad about this in the slightest, and honestly, there's nobody to blame about this situation other than your neighbors and their entitled son. Am I the jerk for telling my sister that she can't force our family to pretend like we like her daughter's name, especially when she named her daughter after my former bully? Here's what happened. So my sister gave birth to her first child 2 months ago and named her Olivia. The name Olivia has a bit of history with our family. To make a long story short, I was bullied by a girl named Olivia for years. My parents had to move out of our local small school into a bigger one, and it did not stop there. What started as an 8-year-old being mean and cruel at times turned into a 16-year-old being arrested for bothering me and making my life an absolute nightmare, and going so far that she was considered a stalker. It was so bad that from the ages of 12 to 16, I did not leave home without one of my parents or one of my older brothers, who were several years older than me. It was also so bad that my parents had to call the police on a few occasions where Olivia followed me home and was outside our house trying to get to me. To say that this was a huge ordeal for all of us is an understatement, and to say it left me with some mental scarring would be an even larger understatement. So when my sister announced that her daughter's name was Olivia, it was honestly a shock. My mom asked her if she was serious, and my sister grew defensive and said, "Of course I'm serious." She said that Olivia is the most popular name right now, and for good reason, because she thinks it's beautiful. My brothers told her that she was insensitive and that they had no idea she cared so little about me, which honestly only added to the defensiveness. My dad didn't say a lot, but he told her that it would take some time for all of us to adjust to the name. But she did not like that. I actually didn't say anything, but she started ranting and raving about how many people are named Olivia, and we're not treating or acting like that about them in the slightest. I wasn't there for the whole thing, but my mom and oldest brother apparently told her that she had every right to name her child whatever they wanted, but that they felt they were being very unfair to me, and that she had to understand that what I had been through was something that they would never fully grasp. My mom said that she is an adult, and she is old enough to accept that people have feelings, and sometimes those feelings will matter more than other feelings. Eventually, my sister contacted me directly after a few weeks of our family not coming around. She said it was all my fault, and that I should have been the one to say something positive about the name, and that I could have turned the tide with the family. I told her that was a name tied up with a lot of trauma for me. She called it absolute garbage and said that I'm old enough now to be mature about it and not take it out on her and her daughter. She wanted me to not hate a name because of a single person, but I also told her that she's old enough to understand that she can't force our family to pretend we like her daughter's name. I told her she is old enough to give us the time that was asked for, and that none of us said it was ugly or awful, but it quite literally is associated with some of my worst memories. She told me we were trying to influence what she could and couldn't name her daughter, and it made us complete jerks, especially me. So honestly, am I the jerk for telling my sister that she can't force our family to like her daughter's name, despite the fact that she named her daughter after my former bully? What should I do? Your sister is being a big jerk. She could name her daughter any number of names. She could go through a litany of other popular names and dodge the one name that's associated with a bully who made your life a living nightmare. I would never do that to a sibling. Your sister is being selfish and absolutely obnoxious, and there's no reason for her to be treating you that way. This honestly does kind of feel targeted in some ways. Like she's like, oh, I'm gonna name my daughter Olivia, and she knew for a fact that Olivia is the name of the person who made your life a living nightmare. Like, that is so inconsiderate, and honestly, it really does make a difference. So sure, you'll love the child no matter what. It's not like we're not gonna like the child when it's born, but the name itself definitely takes time to get used to and not associate with the person who made your life a nightmare. So in my opinion, I don't think you're the jerk. I don't think you've done anything wrong, and I think your sister is really being incredibly inconsiderate. This next story came from the Am I the Jerk subreddit. Check the links in the description and go to AmITheJerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. Am I the jerk for having anger towards my best friend after he participated in cheating with my ex for nearly 2 months before we broke up? Here's what happened. So for some backstory, this story takes place about 5 years ago. My now former best friend and I would always be together hanging out with our mutual friend group. We'll call him Devin. Devin is not his real name. Somewhere around that time, I started talking to a girl by the name of Maria, also not her real name. We would often frequent the store she worked at a lot of that time. I always thought she was pretty cute. She had short red hair, glasses that were kind of nerdy. She played video games and was a huge Harry Potter fan and loved to talk about it all the time, to which I always enjoyed listening to her talk about it. Now, here's where our story really begins. Sometime after I gathered the courage to talk to her, we both started dating, to which I was more happy than I had ever been in my life up to that point. She would be the one to bring me out of my shell more and more, spending whatever time we could get off work together, which I always was thankful for. We spent Christmas and everything together, which up until then I had never done before in my life. After a year, out of the blue, she messaged me and says, "I've been thinking a lot lately. I don't know if I'm ready for a relationship yet. I don't know about a long distance relationship." For reference, we were a 30-minute drive from each other's houses, to which I guess that was understandable. So after a bit of back and forth, we agreed to split up. Within 24 hours of us breaking up, Devin, who I considered a brother who I lived with for a year and a half, I later found out they were at a bar to which some of our mutual friends saw them getting pretty close, if you know what I'm saying. They hid this from me for months till one day in the middle of playing some games, my close friend, who we'll call Toby, blurts out that Devin and my ex are together. I then looked at him confused and I was taken aback. I responded with a bit of a nervous chuckle by saying, "What are you talking about?" He then proceeds to fill me in on everything. The following confrontation went as follows. I said to Devin, "Hey Devin, random question for you, man. Did you hear anything about my ex seeing anyone lately? People are saying she's seeing a guy I know. You wouldn't happen to know anything about that, would you?" Well, like a deer caught in the headlights, he looks up at me and says, No, this is the first time I'm hearing about this. That's weird." I then looked at him and I said, "All right, man, you're like a brother to me. I trust you." Of course, at that point, I lost all respect for him. I said to him, "I've seen the messages. I know you've been seeing her." He then flips the switch on me by saying that she's a grown woman and she can see who she wants, which he was right about, and I honestly couldn't argue that. From that moment on, he made it his vendetta to turn me into the most horrible human being ever birthed. Our mutual friends proceeded to message me within a few days, asking me how I could do that to him and that I have no right to interfere with their love. From then on, I've been looked down with disgust and anger by all of my former friends who are like a second family to me. This anger over that has still not gone away, even all this time later. I have made peace with the fact that things have changed so much. Now, do I think I could have handled things differently and handled my anger better? Of course I do. But you know what they say, hindsight is 20/20 after all. Fast forward a bit, and I learned that after a night of celebrating his birthday, Devin, who is a loud drunk, began to tell everyone at his birthday bash that he had in fact been sleeping around with my ex for 2 months before she ended it with me, and he was laughing the entire time. So am I the jerk for holding on to the anger of having all my friends turned against me? I don't think you're the jerk here in the slightest. Your friend is awful, and all of these former friends are complicit for not saying anything to you. Chances are they probably knew about this situation as well. They probably knew straight up that your ex was cheating on you with your best friend, and they decided to keep quiet about that. That is not a good friend in my opinion, and you do not need those types of people in your life. There's nothing wrong with holding on to the feelings that you have, and honestly, I don't blame you for being angry. I think eventually with time you'll learn to let it go, but right now with this all still ongoing, it's just simply so unfair, and you don't deserve this. So no, you're not the jerk for being angry. Your former friends and your former best friend and ex-girlfriend, they are absolutely the jerks in this situation, and that's something you absolutely need to remember. My entitled thieving jerk of a friend has been using me for friendship just so he can steal my games from my collection. So I decided to get some revenge by meticulously documenting how many games he owed me as well as several other kids on my street. And as a result, he was forced to pay back myself as well as all the other kids that he stole from just to avoid a very serious lawsuit. And I've never been more satisfied to put someone in their place in my life. Here's what happened. Okay, so first off, this story is going back a long way, but I was encouraged to put this up, so here we are. Back in my years at high school, during the PlayStation 1 and PlayStation 2 era, I lived with my grandmother because it was closer to my school than my mother's, who at the time was self-employed and now is a successful SEO developer. I was not popular in school, but had a closely knit group of friends on my home street. Myself was included with 10 kids on the street. 6 of them were pairs of siblings across 7 houses. We all played games, we all completed games, but the amount of games we could get was very different. Now, being the kid with the most, I offered that if anyone wanted to have a go at a game at my house, I would let them. Now, I also have OCD, among other things thanks to a mental disorder. That meant I
used an Excel spreadsheet to record what games I own, if they were bought brand new, as well as the price that they were bought at. And I had dealt with people misusing my friendship in school just to steal from me, with my grandma coming in to save the day. But my main hobby is games, so when I started going to high school, I started pen marking the inside of the game covers, and I would mark the white side of the cover that no one would see. This doesn't affect the resale value. I would also jot the mark down in a notebook with a reference to the game name, while also noting if it was new or pre-owned. I would, on occasion, lend a game with the express direction that if you borrow it for more than 2 weeks, I would hound you to get it back. People rarely borrowed from me, since what they wanted to go on, they could do so at my house. Fast forward, and about at the age of 14, games would suddenly start going missing. Losing one was not new to me, but the frequency of games that went missing had increased, so I set out to have a test. I bought a second notebook and wrote down where each game should have been, editing it only if I moved it. And sure enough, my copy of Final Fantasy X was marked as lost, and it was at that point I realized the worst. One of my friends was absolutely using me and blatantly stealing my games. I knew if I asked anyone on the street about it, whoever was doing it would stop and would most likely never be caught. Fortunately, the ball was not rolling on certain things. While gaming magazines were certainly a thing, it still wasn't that big in my neck of the woods for anyone other than me to be using it, and I kept it that way by helping anyone on my street with information about video games. Bear in mind as well, the internet was not so readily used as it is now, and a PC did not mean internet access. A PC was just a workstation for schoolwork and PC games bought at a store. If you had internet, it either came with dial-up and was used by one person in the house, or you used the Sky Internet keyboard to search using your set-top box. Secondly, and most importantly, it was a 15-minute ride to town and a 2-hour drive to the nearest city, and the difference was that in town did not have a game station. The two places that sold and traded games in town had one policy: the game must come with a box, the disc, and the game manual. I spent an hour removing every manual I had from the games and storing them in a box under the bottom shelf of my set of drawers. That way, if someone really was stealing from me, they would not be profiting off of anything I have. Eventually, I could glean information from outside sources that the 3 sets of siblings on my street were innocent. The first group, who I will refer to as the sisters, their mother came and helped myself and my grandma clean my great-grandmother's house on Saturdays. I would ask what they're playing on, and if a game that went missing came up, I would ask them, "Oh, when did you start on that?" And I would do that for 2 reasons. For one, their mother was kind and I didn't want to upset her. And secondly, I wanted to avoid showing suspicion. However, it was responded with, "Oh, well, I bought them," or basically them saying that they bought it when they were in town. So I knew right away that the sisters were innocent. The second pair, I'll refer as the twins, got whatever they asked for within reason from their parents. So there was no doubt that they were innocent. The third group, who are the brothers, had a younger brother who couldn't keep a secret, and I was very good friends with him. I helped him with his schoolwork, made up the difference if he couldn't quite afford a drink or a chocolate bar, while also making sure that I was an ear for him to talk to, and so much more. And also, I didn't trust the other brother beyond friendship. So if the older brother was playing anything that was missing, I would know, and I would know entirely how it happened. So again, they were innocent. That left 3 boys on my street of varying age, who I only know on a one-on-one basis. If I had suspects, it would be them. Over 2 years of maintaining the facade that I was blissfully unaware, I kept the helpful nature up enough that no one ever questioned my gaming source. And sure enough, games kept going missing, but I was looking for something. No manuals, no trade-ins, meaning no extra cash towards the latest games. I had actually been waiting for one of the games to go missing that people had seen me play and wanted to play. A game by the name of Vex, which is a game similar to Mario 64, but replaced the stars with hearts, is the one I'm referring to. One of the hearts you could earn in the game had copy protection on it, meaning that the answer to that one was in the manual, and this was a common practice before the internet was really a major thing. And sure enough, a month after finishing, it went missing. A week later, a boy my age, who I will refer to as the thieving jerk, asked me how to open the chest in the whale. I said to him, "Oh, well, it's in the manual." The thieving jerk replied that he had no manual and that it was bought at a car boot sale. But after I heard that, in my mind, I had got him. His parents never went far in town, so he never went to the city to get any kind of games like that. And there had not been a car boot sale in nearly 4 months. So that's when I made my play. The thieving jerk went to karate practice on Tuesdays between 7 and 9, and I waited until 7:10 and went to his house with my grandma with my notebooks, printouts of my records on game purchases, and a document, and I will get to that in just a moment. After a brief talk of disbelief, I asked if I could prove if their son was stealing. Now, with them thinking that I wouldn't find anything, they absolutely let me. I walked over to the copy of Vex that sat in the front room. I showed them the inside with no manual. I showed them my notebook and lifted the cover of the game box, showing a signed pen mark that I used next to the notebook with the same pen mark on the inside cover. While they were stunned, I took this opportunity to pick up a second and third, point to the pen mark in the book, and then move the label accordingly to show an identical copy. When the mother saw this, she went white. I asked if I could see if there were more in the house. Shocked, the father complied, and after 20 minutes, I had 30 plus games on the table in front of them, all with missing booklets, all with pen marks on the reverse of the label that matched the inside of the notebooks. But the best part about it, upstairs on his PC desk was a note detailing who had what. When I showed them the note, you could see the rage building in the father's eyes, while my grandma talked to the mother about what could happen next, with her basically threatening legal ramifications for thievery, and that now that this kid is 16 years old, he could be tried as an adult with the right judge. I decided to show the father where I found the note, and he found folders of the records of games owned by others, and when he had acquired them, and how much he had traded them in for. Yes, it wasn't just me. Over several years, he had been stealing games as far back as Mega Drive era, playing on them until he was done, and then trading them in as his own to pocket the cash. He had only started with me a few years back, when my grandma had allowed me to move consoles downstairs for friends to go on the condition that it was only when I had friends around and only one console at a time, with only the games we were going on to avoid making a mess. Going downstairs, I laid out the document I had saved until now. It was a document that myself, my grandmother, and my mother had laid out, detailing that I would not take the evidence I had to the police on the condition that every game wrongfully taken, and if in the event that this couldn't happen, then the full price of the game when I bought it would be returned to my grandmother within 6 months' time. That way, it could be returned to the rightful owners in one form or another. Now, when it comes to this document that was written up, I had to thank my mother here for the genius thought of wording it in such a way so that in the event I wasn't the only victim, everybody involved would find justice. Both parents looked at this document and signed it. I signed it and my grandmother signed it, and the four of us waited at that time. We talked over how we would handle this, agreeing that I would take the folders home and do the research on the retail price on any missing game. When the thieving jerk returned, the look on his face was priceless as he stared at the folders and piles of games. In the time, I had called my grandfather to help us carry the games and the notes down the street back to my house. Before leaving, we informed the thieving jerk exactly what was going to happen, which was all much to his dismay. Now, his house is 4 doors down and across the small one-exit street. At the other end is a garden and a modern train line that runs through the town. From 9 till 10, I could hear the father yelling at his kid, even as the 9:15 train went past, all while I was going through the records on my PC, scanning them in with a very basic scanner by today's standards, and it felt great, and I found it soothing as I combed through everything. That weekend, I printed off several copies of the agreement and documents listing what had been stolen from each of my friends or pairs of siblings, as well as how much they were worth and when to expect the money. I returned the folders and gave the parents a copy of the agreement with a value of how much he had stolen from all parties, as well as what could not be returned. They told me they would pay it and it would come out of the thieving jerk's savings and allowance, and this would be for the next 4 years. Both me and him were 16 at the time, and he would be in his first year of university before he paid his parents back, and unsurprisingly, the karate trips absolutely stopped. Once they had closed the door, I pulled several envelopes out of my bag and made the rounds on my streets. Every kid got one of these envelopes that held the information relevant to them and a copy of the agreement. To my surprise, it took 2 weeks for every penny to be given to my grandma, using the records I gave each of my friends with exactly how much they were owed in an envelope to avoid any prying eyes. Once that was done, I waited till the following Monday and handed a copy of the agreement to my school. Like most schools, mine had a system that duties would be delegated to the most trustworthy and well-behaved of the students that both me and the thieving jerk were on. The thieving jerk was removed from that list, and the staff knew that he was an absolute jerk.
jerk. On my street, he was removed from the circle of friends, we wouldn't talk to him, and he wasn't welcome at street events, and most certainly not on any trips. In school, he wasn't even allowed on any field trips because his father wouldn't sign the permission slip. After that, I didn't change, and sure, we were one friend down, but none of my games went missing ever again. When I turned 18, I moved because of college to my mom's house, but I had only used up the money returned to me by then to buy a new Xbox 360 at the time. My mom keeps a framed copy of the signed agreement in the office, and I keep the original framed in my office to this day just to remind me. Unsurprisingly, after finishing high school, he and his parents moved away, as it was quite clear that the kids and parents alike wanted absolutely nothing to do with him. Seriously, the original poster is like Batman. Like, this gave off Death Note vibes of how detailed and organized you were. You say you have OCD, but honestly, that really saved your skin. This allowed you to have a detailed, organized list of what games you do and don't have. And honestly, there's nothing wrong with that. You're passionate about games. It's fun for you. Like, why would you not want to be involved and have a good time? So it's really cool to see that you went through so much effort to try and get your games back. Because I totally get it. These are more than just sentimental things. This is something that's important to you and it means a lot. And it's much more than just a video game. This is a collection. This is something that you want to have a collection of and be able to look back with pride that you bought all this stuff and you can still play it to this day. But this thieving jerk was basically ruining that experience. He was taking your games and deciding, no, I want them for myself. And he was not only doing that to you, he was doing that to everybody on that street. And that is such awful behavior. There's no excuse for the way that kid acted. I mean, I'm even willing to give somebody the benefit of the doubt. There's always that one dumb kid that steals a game, but then they either give it back and apologize, or they at least feel guilty as a normal human being and vow to never do that ever again because it's wrong. Like, kids are stupid. They're gonna do dumb things and they're gonna steal and do stuff that's stupid. But this kid is not someone you would classify as some dumb kid. He did this on purpose. He did this deliberately and he used you to try and get to your collection. And that is so messed up. That is way worse than taking a game and feeling guilty about it later. I mean, this guy went about this with a purpose. He was gonna take your game and then he was gonna sell it off. But the original poster's plan of action to prevent that from ever happening was genius. Like, this kid was seriously so awesome. He not only had it all organized in a notebook, but he also had a document ready once he found the thieving jerk. This guy waited 2 years just to get this guy taken care of. Like, that's a whole different level of patience that I would never be able to deal with. So honestly, good for the original poster. If something ever goes missing of mine, I would love to give you a call because you clearly know exactly how to get this going. And hopefully in whatever future career you have, you're able to use these detective skills to better the world around you. Because seriously, what you did was awesome. And that thieving jerk absolutely had it coming. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also, go to AmITheJerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. A nasty homeowner tried to charge back on the services we provided, so my boss maliciously complied and refused to answer any of their phone calls just to get back at them for not paying them. Here's what happened. So when I was in college almost 20 years ago, I had a summer job working for a small builder. We were building a good-sized deck and installing some large boulders around it as landscaping. The guy driving the equipment used to move the boulders backed into the side of the house. A window and part of the wall was destroyed. The corner of the equipment was about a foot inside the living room. The guy we were working for explained everything to the homeowner and promised it would be fixed as soon as possible. He even put it in writing at the homeowner's request. Now, the homeowner was upset, but seemed pretty reasonable and understanding. We were there until 10 o'clock that night, building a temporary wall and covering it with plywood. The owner and the other guy went back the next day to make it look a little nicer. The plan was to order the window and siding and come back to do everything right once we had the supplies. The cost to repair the house was much more than we were paid for the entire deck and landscaping job. Now, the thing is, the homeowner had paid in full with a credit card at the start of the job, so he decided to do a chargeback, saying no goods or services were provided. My boss was angry. He had agreed to every extra thing the homeowner had asked for, which included replacing another unbroken window so they would match, replacing the carpet in the entire room even though it wasn't really damaged, repainting the entire room, a hallway, and 2 other rooms that were the same color so they would all match, as well as several other things. However, the next time the homeowner called for an update, the boss told him that he had received the chargeback, saying that no goods goods or services were provided by him, so it must have been some other company that did the work. So he told them to call the other company and stopped answering the homeowner's phone calls. I would like to imagine his malicious compliance worked and it just ended there, and that he got away with only the money lost from the chargeback and not the cost of fixing the house. I'm not sure how it ended, and the summer did end, and I went back to school after that, but I'm sure he fixed the house eventually. Honestly, that's really messed up. I mean, first off, they tried to make everything right. They tried to do exactly what they needed to do to put up a temporary wall to fix the stuff that broke when they had the accident. It wasn't on purpose, it's not like they did it maliciously, so the fact that they would act like that and then try and charge back all the money that they paid to have this done is, in my opinion, unbelievably toxic. I'm also really surprised that insurance of some kind, whether it's business or homeowners insurance, didn't kick in and cover all the costs to the house. Like, sure, you can put up a temporary wall just to help out, and yeah, it's gonna take a while to get things fixed and paid for, but at least you can start the process and get this all worked out. So hopefully some kind of communication was able to start, because I'm pretty sure what the homeowner did was theft, and they absolutely need to pay up, otherwise there's gonna be problems. My wife is an incorrigible slob who blames me for absolutely everything, and after 14 years of marriage, I'm emotionally numb and I've completely given up. Here's what happened. Honestly, where do I even begin? There are a lot of connected problems that add to this post, so I will do my best to be brief. My wife and I have been together for nearly 2 decades now, and we've been married for 14 years. Together, we have a 10-year-old son whom we both adore. She's a great mother to him, without question. However, since the beginning, my wife has been a total, complete slob and hoarder. Any chore she starts will get dropped halfway done and not picked up again for days at a time, if not weeks. Every flat surface of our home is covered in things that she can't be bothered to put away or even just get rid of. Her favorite chair never gets used since it's a collecting ground of things that she'll drop there. Her walk-in closet has a 6-inch layer of unused clothes carpeting it, and this is since we bought our home 6 years ago. I could go on, but I hope this gives you an idea of what I live in. Of course, this begs the question of my participation in the chores. Now, I'm no angel, and I have my own clutter here and there, but little more than an average lived-in home would. For comparison, once I cleaned off our kitchen table and made respective piles of my mess versus hers just to make a point, I filled a full-size garbage bag, and then some with what she had on the table. My mess was a shoebox of Warhammer figures, a book, and a mug. I cleaned too, but dealing with her mess is beyond daunting. I've totally gutted and cleaned rooms just to have her bury them within a week. The worst part about it all is the part that has killed me over the years. In her eyes, this is all my fault. These are my messes, despite her owning 99% of everything left around. She will reach past 20 things on a table that she put there that simply don't belong just to grab my one coffee mug and start grumbling about my mess and how she has to do everything. And usually this is in a passive-aggressive rant to one of our cats about how put upon she is. I mean, come on, she even wanted a deal where I would wash the laundry and she would fold it. I washed most every day, and the pile of unfolded clean laundry in the living room just grew and grew. A couple months of this and suddenly she says she's taking over washing from me because she's tired of her clothes getting wrinkled on the floor. So I get told I'm at fault for doing my half of a chore while she ignores hers. I just can't argue with her at all. She's gone completely delusional. So I'm just done. I don't care anymore. And I live in abject, numb misery. And this is all with the realization that she will never change, and I will always be her scapegoat. Is there any hope for us? Is there any way I can make her see sense? What should I do? Honestly, this is really embarrassing, and it's such a shame, because it sounds like you're doing everything you can to try and make this work, but it really seems like your wife is being unreasonable. And that is not okay. Like, that is seriously messed up. She's clearly denying the fact that she causes most of the mess, while also simultaneously trying to blame it on you, as if you're the one that caused all of her mess. Like, it almost sounds like she needs some kind of intervention, but I honestly don't even know what that would look like. Maybe there's like some professional service that might be available, or maybe there's some kind of therapy that you can both go to try and work this out, but that's all contingent upon her actually wanting to have something done about this. So truly, I'm so sorry you're dealing with this, and hopefully some kind of solution comes about from this, because the way she's acting is really inappropriate, and this is something that really needs to change as soon as possible. When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications. To finish listening to all the stories, check out the playlist at the top of the description. And if you like Am I the Jerk, make sure to subscribe to Am I the Genius. Everything will be linked down below in the description.